Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, the Poobah Frazier, my host companion, Sejan Sarwick. Sejan.
Hey, man, what's
What's up?
When did I get that nickname? when did
When
that
you
happen?
went at the end of Brendan Fraser History Month, when you won the big quiz of Brendan Fraser, that was what was on the table. I mean, it's your title. It's kind of cool. You can, choose your appearance. So if you don't want that to show up before your name, you just go into your settings and disable it. You just gotta do that.
Yeah, with all these weird Discord updates lately, I don't know if I love what they're doing.
Did you have to change your username on Discord yet?
I mean, so it said so it said change your name, but it allowed me to just use my name that I've been using.
Yeah, but it got rid of your original legacy Discord name, which was the name that you're using, and then #, 4 numbers. Because those numbers, which were not choosable by the user, that was the original identifier. But in a race to unity and the congealment, the starbucking, as they call it at World's End, or the World's End. It's the World's End.
The gentrification.
The gentrification. I mean, it's the homogenization, really. It's everything needs to be the same.
It's using a bunch of other armchair expert words. Come on, let's throw some more out there.
Discord decided we're going to be like every other platform, and rather than let you name yourself whatever you want with the unique identifier, let's force people to have usernames. Now, me, while we're talking about it, if you look at my username right now, you might notice that there's a little bit of a disconnect between my display name and what my username is.
Okay. I'm trying to see, but I'm just seeing Fox Zero everywhere, which is pretty standard for you.
Yeah. So and that's fine. I wouldn't want to announce what I am right there anyway. Fox Zero is fine. You can contact me on Discord at Fox Zero. That's I will listen. I listen to all sorts of gamers.
You advertise your Twitch channel in which you play retro games,
that's true.
And that is the name of which you are under.
Right.
So
here's the thing.
You're trying to keep it a secret.
I knew that my Fox Zero account, because it was created in 2017, would be the first one to be forced to change its username. So what I parked, what I wanted a username to be on an additional account that I have that I use for more professional things. So currently my Fox Zero one is that parked one. The Say Report one, I parked the Fox Zero at, and then the other one currently is still legacy style. So once it became available to change my professional Discord name, I changed the Say Report to the Say Report, and now it won't let me use the one that I had parked there. So I'm in the middle of this weird Prisoner of Zenda sort of shuffle, and it's not working out. I'm not very happy about it.
Well, you see, you need 2 more brains in order to make sure that you can. Yeah.
It's just, I'm enjoying it, but it's one of those situations where there is a name that I want to make sure I have on the internet. And if you've been listening to the show, you notice that at the end, you can reach me on Twitter at Devin D. Decker. That's because somebody very early on parked on just at Devin Decker, currently has no followers, follows nobody, and there's nothing I can do to get that. I've tried. I get drunk, and not always on alcohol, just on nostalgia, or I can't sleep at 4 a.m. I've been up till 4 a.m. And I'll reach out to Twitter and be like, I'd really like this username, please. And they always say
Elon,
no.
Please, Daddy Elon.
They're not using it. And you've said you're going to get rid of inactive accounts. It doesn't get more inactive than that. But then
that shit's gonna get really weird though, man. You as long as you are sure that they have not done or said anything in the past, then you're good to go. But this stuff where people can just go in and buy up company names just because Elon's having a shit fit one day is just another nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean, Twitter right now is a hellscape without any denial of that.
Social media in general is just kind of exploding at the moment, and it's kind of glorious to watch as somebody from the outside. I gotta say, I'm gonna I'm gonna sit here and pat myself on the back for just a second, but like, it's not that I am completely divorced from it. We've talked about the idea that things that we don't necessarily consider social media, but really are, Reddit and stuff, which I think it's really obvious where that comes from, but also stuff like YouTube accounts, right? Like, and the idea that you can communicate with others through YouTube comments and conversations, and you can find yourself in communities there. Like, it is a social media. There is at least a social media aspect to the YouTube existence, right? And that is something I'm deep in. So like, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm completely divorced from this shit entirely. But as somebody that has left Twitter and has not really left Facebook, I can't say that because I am there, but like, I never use the damn thing, right? Like, so watching this sort of stuff just kind of all fall down around everybody's knees is just kind of like yeah. I won't say that I knew this was coming, but I'm not disappointed it is.
Yeah, for me, on that whole aspect of it, I really enjoy tagging you on Facebook and seeing if you're going to respond. I've tagged you in some outlandish things.
Yeah,
so like,
what?
Sijan's still on Facebook.
When I first got into like the whole internet world, there was a good few months, I think like 6 months of my first like 6 months on the internet that you could find my presence attached to a whole bunch of weird shit on YouTube because of friends of ours in college that thought it'd just be really funny. They were like, well, now when you Google Siege and a bunch of Counting Crows videos come up. Thanks guys.
I mean, that I always do think of you as the Counting Crows guy. I hope that's okay. But while you've patted yourself on the back, this seems like a good segue into something. It kind of hurts a little bit to call you the Pooh Bah of Frasier every episode, because like it's a reminder of an L. It's a loss that I have suffered. But in the time, first of all, I guess the first thing we have to say, because we specifically said that we would tell you what happened at the end of the time capsule episode that we dropped last week, finally closing the book, putting it into a chest, wrapping that chest in chains, putting 3 padlocks on it, and hawking it into the river, hopefully never to be seen again on the David Dorfman cinematic universe. The reason that happened, it was just Father's Day. I wanted to do something with my dad. And we made early reservations to do that. So it was just easier to use our time capsule episode than anything. I just want to make sure that people don't know that, like, Sijan and I were not dying or anything for this use of the time capsule, which is also a pretty nice transition point into what our next time capsule is on. Because we didn't know this when we did it, but yesterday, we record on Sunday, I'll remind you, June 24th was the 34th anniversary of the release of Batman 1989, directed by Tim Burton himself. And the next time capsule episode is on that movie. So look forward to that. It's pretty fun. We had a good time.
It was a blast. Yeah, so I look forward to whenever that comes out for whatever reason it does.
Yeah. And also, bonus, it's weirdly relevant because we talk about the Flash in that one, as the Flash has just been another L.
Fizzles out.
Like, just...
Yeah, I am actually, like to be... So, just a little behind the scenes stuff, like, one of the big things that you sent me... Big things. One of the quick things you sent me, honestly, about the Flash stuff is that somebody made that comment about how, at this point, Black Adam is currently financially kicking the shit out of any DC movie that's come out since.
Yeah.
And that is buck wild to think about.
Yeah, it really is.
As two people that enjoyed that movie, even we were the first to admit when it was not, when it was not getting the cultural traction, shall we say, that we enjoyed with it. Even we admitted, like, we know why this is not happening, right? But the fact of the matter is right now it's looking like it's going to be the last successful film of the DC universe for a while.
Yeah, before the James Gunnification of the whole thing. That is crazy. That, especially when you consider that Black Adam was a movie that we saw because, like, maybe we have to, and we just happen to be in the same area at the same time. So, like, let's make this our movie. That's what happens when Sijan and I tend to be in the same area. We go eat or drink somewhere, and then we try to see a movie together. That is what our friendship is punctuated by. I'm a big fan of that. I just want you to know that. And if we don't see a movie, we beat a video game. Like, I
mean, yeah, right. I mean, and like there's just too much around it to like not, that movie very much spoke to us, and we ended up enjoying it because of that, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
like we can't deny the fact that we went to go see this movie together and like also liked it. So clearly, it was the right decision. It's just like I said, even we walked out of that movie talking about like all of the stuff that we would never see more of, how disappointed we were that things weren't going to continue. But I don't think we foresaw this.
No.
Like, I just can't. Like, the thing about the Flash not doing well, and I think we kind of talked about this. I can't remember if it was on
It was in the
time
Batman
capsule
one, so it's fine to.
but where we talked about the idea that James Gunn and the future of the DC movie universe really kind of was going to come out ahead no matter what happened with the Flash. Either the Flash was going to be super successful and it was going to open the door to the multiverse, and so they were going to just be able to do whatever the fuck they wanted, or if the Flash didn't do well, and now in hindsight, I think this is the scenario we're in, like, it was going to give them carte blanche to do whatever the fuck they wanted going forward, right? Like, so either way, they were setting themselves up to kind of start to wash their hands of things, which we've known for a while was always going to kind of be the move after things have not been panning out with like Justice League and stuff like that. We knew that DC was kind of looking for a way to kind of reset, essentially. So, like, I don't think that this means that this is going to change anything going forward. You know what I mean? It's not like when we talked about, and I don't want to bring up Quantumania only in the aspect that, like, I don't consider it as big a failure as anything that DC has had, as much as people want to talk about Quantumania being some sign that Marvel fell on its face. It still made $500 million, which I will point out Sony Marvel is currently touting as the number for Spider-Verse as a huge success. So like, so the fact that like Sony Marvel is looking at that number and saying, look at how good we're doing, and then like Disney Marvel is looking at that number and being like, that's the bastard stepchild, is fucking nuts. But at the end of the day, that is nothing compared to what's going on with like Flash and Shazam 2 and all that shit. Like it just, like, DC's just not getting its footing. But where Marvel Disney is kind of in this place where I'm very I'm very interested to see how they're going to move forward, considering everything that happened with Quantumania, both as a successful film and behind the scenes, right? Versus, I haven't seen The Flash yet. You know, we've talked about how I don't know how much I'm going to force myself to search that movie out in the future, blah, blah, blah. But I do feel pretty good that DC's in a great place to just kind of do their own thing now, right? Like, so as much as this has kind of been watching DC kind of trip over itself the last 6 months, I do think that they're actually okay, right?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I really do hope we get like one more short. And it doesn't need to be more than 5 minutes long. In fact, if it were any longer than 5 minutes, I think the opportunity that I am thinking of in my mind will have been woefully wasted. But what I would absolutely love as a way to close the door on the DCEU before James Gunn DCU is introduced is Black Adam versus Henry Cavill Superman, and Black Adam just kills him. Just ends him, rips him in half like a Mortal Kombat fucking fatality.
Yeah, I was thinking hand through, pull out spine, like a Mortal Kombat fatality. I think we both really want to just see them go like full on Mortal Kombat.
All right, so hand through the heart, spine comes out the back, lifts it up, chucks it, grabs the remaining gaping neck hole, and just splits it down the middle and throws one east, one west. And then we see them circle the earth until they smack into each other, kicking his own ass on both sides.
I think I threw up a little with that description, but sure, yeah.
I know gaping was the word that did it for most people.
I think that might have been the moment. Yeah.
But it is.
You know, I don't know. Do you have much like? There isn't too much more I really want to say with Flash. We've talked. I mean, both between the episode that we just recorded that people will hear in the future, plus stuff we've already said. You know, and like, as I have said, for me personally, like, it's just so hard to talk about this movie because of the behind the scenes stuff, everything going on with Miller and their whole, you know, come to Jesus moment that they're apparently having right now. I I hope the best for them, but like, I just don't care to support this shit right now. You know? Maybe. I mean, maybe they'll pull something out. Like maybe they'll pull out of this tailspin and really come around. I mean, like, you know, because like, look at guys that we celebrate all the time, guys like RDJ and stuff like that. Like they had these moments in their careers early on when they were younger, you know. And so maybe that's all this is for Miller. But
yeah, when Ezra Miller makes the Charlie Chaplin movie, like, it'd be interesting if their career was the Benjamin Button of RJD's career.
RDJ, but yeah.
Wait, RDJ, that's what I said.
You said RJD,
I think
but
I said,
we're gonna go
well,
stick on
you
it.
can check the tape and let us know on Twitter, listeners, at the Say Report. No, I didn't really want to say anything about it. It was just,
No.
I said specifically at the end of My Boss's Daughter that we'll tell you why we had to use this.
Yeah,
Because that episode, had some stuff about suicide and illness. So, like, we want to make sure that people know why we used this episode. It was weird. It was like a weird thing that we did. We were in a weird place where we recorded that one. And then I wanted to celebrate the Batman of it all. But yeah, so I don't have anything else to say about The Flash. I will watch it if it's free and I still have Max for free. Which, like, those didn't seem like caveats 6 months ago. But honestly, who the frick knows by the time that comes out?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to pay any money
this
for
lets
it.
us then roll into talking about one thing in particular that I think we need to address just because it's an ongoing conversation on this show. And that is, we have seen the official first use of AI in a Marvel property this week.
Oh, good. I mean, yeah, you know what? Here's the deal, all right? Anything negative we're going to talk about because there's a bunch of positive we get to finish this episode on. And even like with that type of lead in, I was going to share one of my W's that turned into an L, but no. Let's start with the Secret Invasion AI generated opening.
And I don't even want to go beyond that because the show only just came out this week. I have not actually finished the episode. I literally started it just to see this thing that everybody was talking about. But I am doing that thing where I want to let a few episodes build up before I like start taking it in. So this is going to be spoiler free for the show and all that. We're not going to be talking about that.
I just want to interject with that. Watch the first episode. And I'm not saying I understand. I know that you like to build them up and go through them. There is so many things that happen in the first episode that need to happen for you in that moment. I'm not going to spoil any of them here, but if you wait, you are risking it. And the way that it ends in a way that you're not going to be like clamoring for the next episode, which is weird. Admittedly, like it doesn't end on some huge cliffhanger or anything like that. It really feels like a movie, which is the biggest praise that I can give to the show, is that it felt like a very complete package.
Good to know.
And I'm excited for more of that.
I will consider it. But for the moment, this is fucking fascinating to me so I don't know when this would have kind of occurred, right? So for anybody that doesn't know, the opening credits for the new Secret Invasion series that premiered on Disney Plus this week for Marvel is AI generated. It uses a style of AI generated art. I forget what it's called. Coheed and Cambria apparently just used the same system to just do their like latest music video and stuff. This has been out in the water in a couple of different ways already. And like I said, I don't know the history behind like when I don't know if they were always planning on using this, not always, but like, this was a plan before the writer's strike, because like it doesn't involve writers, right? But it's fascinating to me that in the middle of all of this stuff with the writer's strike and everything that's come out there, we have actually seen the first implementation of it in a Disney property, which is, I mean, I think it's huge, right? Like, I think this is a huge step in this whole, I don't know in what direction, but in this whole conversation about the use of AI in our media. This is just nuts to me. It also comes out in the same week in which we've started to really kind of examine some of the unexpected speed bumps with AI. Nothing huge, but like I don't know. Did you hear about like how AI art is apparently like eating its own tail
itself? Yeah, which is hilarious to me. I think
like this idea that AI, there's so much AI art being produced, and I will point out in specific circles, right? There's certain groups, certain areas, certain bubbles you can get into out there where you see a lot of that shit, right? And those happen to be the same bubbles that AI is, really tuned into. So it's starting to just pull from the same pool of generated AI art, and thus kind of getting worse, kind of like a photocopier just having like a worse and worse and worse like result coming out of it because it's just feeding off of itself. Yeah. So with all that coming out, and then seeing the first big implementation of AI this week in a huge property, it's just like I was ready to not be talking about this again for another week, but like this shit's not stopping. This train's not stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, so this is such a weird thing to me because this was news everywhere. This was something that like the morning radio shows addressed, was the AI generated credit sequence and how people were upset. It was not something that I thought was going to happen. On the day that the episode came out, thankfully, right, this was the only thing that I saw on any of the social media platforms. None of the like show, like usually I avoid social media because I'm afraid that I'm going to end up seeing a spoiler and I'm going to be pissed that like, sorry, I couldn't watch it right at midnight, motherfuckers. Right? Like one of those situations. No, this is all everybody was talking about. But the important thing from me, and if I credit the wrong visual effects company here, I'm sorry, but I'm like 97% sure that it was Mainline VFX who did the opening. So,
I think that is I think you're correct, because it's using, hold on, keep talking, because it uses a very specific thing that they that they created.
Well, so Mainline VFX, I believe it says opening sequence done by. Now, first of all, a lot of people were just down on Secret Invasion. Like, it's like, this is not good, Marvel. And I'm like, I loved it. The first episode really excited me for what's going to happen. And
we know, like, in that regard, we just know that that's how this machine works now.
Yeah.
We're just going to have a huge vocal group. I won't even say minority or majority because we don't know that yet. But there's always going to be this huge vocal group at first that's just going to be down on this shit. And like, it's part of the reason that we've talked so much about leaving social media, is that like, without being able to tell if this is like legitimate feelings or not, or just people being just shitty, like it sucks.
Yeah. But after the episode, I'm like, well, that was really good. I'm not sure why this is, other than, I guess I'm just going to call it the algorithm that says like, you get the clicks, you get the interactions, you make the impressions by putting that stuff out when something is new. Really, anything is new in the comic book related entertainment space. So I'm like, so that's good. I don't want to talk about how terrible this episode was. But also, the episode was so good that I'm like, and I'm going to keep the AI thing to myself. Because at the end of the day, and I mean, like, with my family, like, it's not one of those things where, like, that was so bad, I don't really want to talk about how bad it was. So let's shift focus to this AI thing and what it could mean. But then what I'm thinking is, the argument for AI the entire time, once you get past the computers are taking over of it all, is that we're going to need human beings who can like wrangle and corral the artificial intelligence. Because left to its own devices, at the level it's at right now, artificial intelligence is not like good enough yet to fully not have a human being looking at it. And so watching the opening, first of all, I loved the opening. I thought it was very cool, considering the fact of the shapeshifter nature of the Secret Invasion and who can you trust, who is like, I'm like, this is really cool. But also, there has to have been a human being who like edited this stuff together, who ultimately put together that opening sequence. Because
and this is something that we talked about with the idea that AI is going to require a different set of skills, but it is still going to require people be on either end of it, right? You're going to need prompt creators, which I think is going to be a job in the future, and you're going to need copy editors that come in afterwards to make sure that it didn't put a penis on Samuel Jackson's face, right? Like, you need a human to okay it in the end. That being said, I think the problem comes from, you're talking about two positions in a place where we once had 24, right?
Yes.
So like, it sucks in that regard. But you're right. And again, we've talked about this before, this idea that there still needs to be a human element to all of this that is not being talked about, right? Like the ways in which that is going to still be a thing going forward. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you in the idea of like, why the off-putting nature of AI generated art kind of is exactly the whole thing with the Skrull, right? Like, it is actually a really interesting use of the technology with that artistic concept. I just, there's a lot of baggage on the other side of it that I don't think, I don't think that forgives all of the negative baggage that comes along with using AI art. As much as I think it's a really cool justification, I don't think it's a full justification, if that makes sense.
I understand that. And it's really just bad optics as we just passed the 50th day of the writer's strike, which means
Yeah, no,
halfway as long
insanely bad
as
out
what happened in 2007 in our own lives.
Yeah.
That's an important date. And honestly, did it feel to you like 50 days have gone by, Sejin? 53 as of this recording? Like,
I don't know. Some days it feels like 100. Some days it feels like 2. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I just feel like in 2007 we heard more about it, and maybe it was because we were literally surrounded by creatives who it was having an effect on, and now we're older and not in that exact world. I mean, I'm not. I don't know about you. You could be talking
Well,
about it every
it's
meal.
hugely
So
affecting me. Well, here's the thing: is this is like hugely affecting me directly without getting too much into like personal shit. But like, I rent. You know, I don't think that that's anything that's gonna like give too much away in the world. Like, I don't own like my living abode, and I happened to rent from a couple of people that work in the industry, and we feel it. You know, it's the same thing that happened during COVID when everybody was out of work in the industry during COVID, and we very much felt the tightening of like, hey, they're not sending a guy around to fix the plumbing as fast as they were before and stuff like that. And like that kind of shit's happening again for us right now with this writer's strike because our landlords are full on out of business in their mainline work. And so it affects the ways in which our house is being taken care of, which is like a weird ripple effect that like, you know, I'm such an edge case that like I don't want to I'm not out there like talking about how the writer strike needs to end so that my house works again. Like that's not where I'm at. But like it is something that I weirdly am actually super attuned into simply because the people that own my house are actually affected by all this.
cool. No, I'm good. I'm glad that I didn't say anything unilateral there. But also, you're closer to like an epicenter of it than me. So if there were ripples, you would feel them far sooner than I would. Even like with New York being as close as we are, the main contention of this writer's strike is in Los Angeles, is in Hollywood. Like the WGEA
there's a lot of really interesting talk going on about how this may or may not affect Sundance. You know, nothing like major or concrete yet. So this is not me like reporting behind the scenes news, but this idea that that over the years we've talked about how the world has talked about how Sundance has gotten very corporate and there's a lot of bigger companies that are putting work in, right? And there's actually this kind of thing in the water right now that like if this goes on much longer, there's going to be a lot of corporate movies that don't get made. There's going to be a lot of bigger films that just aren't going to be done in time for Sundance, which is going to leave more room for these independent films because the big thing about these independent films is you don't have writers working on them that are on strike right now. You have a lot of people that are just doing their own thing. And in fact, more people doing their own thing because a lot of these writers that would normally be in a writer's room for WB, NBC, stuff like that, like they're sitting at home actually working on passion projects. So like there is this I think it's people looking for a silver lining, right? I think that's what the big thing is but there is this kind of like hope in the water out here right now that this might lead to a really interesting like independent film season just because of the fact that there's going to be so many people writing independently, which is, you know, maybe I'll be curious to see because I think it really depends on how long this thing goes. Like if this thing's over in the next few days, which it won't be, but I'm just saying like in a hypothetical, if it were to be over in the next few days, I don't think we're going to see much effect going forward, but we're slowly starting to reach that point where where you're going to see a bell curve of projects being pushed off or some straight up being canceled or like people are introducing projects that they've been working on. You know, not to bring up a sore spot in the world, but like Joss Whedon's Much Ado About Nothing, which was kind of the last like artistically successful film I think he made because a lot of movies he's touched since then have not done so well. But that was entirely written during him just having downtime after Avengers was filmed, right? And that idea that like somebody out there is probably doing that right now, right? There is probably some artist that we all know and love. You know, like J.J. Abrams is probably sitting in his house right now, probably writing a dozen scripts a day because he doesn't know what else to be doing, right? But like that idea that somebody's going to come out with something that's going to be cool and unexpected, and they're going to credit it to the fact that they weren't working in a space, you know, where they were restricted in any way. It's just like I said, I think it's people grasping at like silver lining straws out here that you know, I hope we do get something good out of this, but right now, man, it's really rough.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I just don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I'm starting to see bigger issues from it. like Magnum PI. This is just an example that literally came across my eyeballs yesterday. Was rescued from cancellation by CBS for 2 seasons. The way that they said is that, like, we're bringing it back for season 5 and season 6. But now, with the writer's strike, the option to renew their contracts is up this coming Friday, June 30th. So because of that uncertainty, that 6th season that they were promised at the pickup time has been canceled. And then the way that they did it is that they turned season 5 into part A, part B. So, like, technically, they didn't breach contract that they had offered to the people. It's just really weird and fascinating. But the major citation for a show that on NBC was performing. It's not like they brought it back and we're seeing issues. It's just the fact of, like, oh, we really don't want to make a commitment to a season 6. Well, right now, nothing is being created.
Yeah.
That's like the first really affected by the writer's strike choice that I can point at.
Yeah.
And
I
think
we talked
that
about some of the late night stuff being kind of the first things to suffer. SNL clearly having episodes canceled. What you're saying is this is the first show that's affected you personally, though.
Well, no. I mean, like, going forward, because they would have started the production on that stuff in June if they had renewed the contracts, because all of season 5 is in the can. So then they would have started it, and then we have it to really act as utility player. So it's a mid-season replacement, but it's Magnum PI, so it has a built-in fan base. It's just this, like, weird change. Yeah, no, that stuff, but I'm like, where the ongoingness of the strike, the fact that the strike is still happening, is starting to have it. I can't think of any other shows or any other, like, acting contracts that have been affected because of it.
Yeah. I mean, like as we said, this thing is still going, so
we'll see.
Yeah, and so, like, Disney in the middle of all of this, putting out this, like, AI generated piece of art is just, like, really just
it's terrible
a
optics.
bizarre I mean, like, and like, so one of the big things with AI is this idea of it's pulling from these sources, it's not crediting artists, it's not all this stuff, and, like, Disney, who infamously, like, plays fucking Calvin ball with copyright law, right? Like, their whole thing about trying to keep copyright going, and then they have the nerve to be the first big company out there to use this AI generated art that is by its very nature stolen, right? Like, that's just how it that's how it operates, right?
I mean, how stolen is it, though, is my question. Because, like, we look at AI as a monolith. Artificial intelligence is this one thing. At least that's how it feels like it's discussed. When honestly, that's not the case. Like, the art ones online that right now you and I could type prompts into and have art generated, they are a bit more monolithic because they are pulling from everywhere. But if for that scroll AI, and again, this is all conjecture on my point, I have nothing to back this up or support it, but if for that scroll thing, they just dumped a bunch of images from Marvel Comics into the pool for the AI to generate from, they legally own the copyrights of all that art.
So this is where you're starting to talk about something that's really interesting. And this is really where I was kind of, like, cooking my noodle this week, trying to, like, figure out how this was all going to kind of shake out in certain places. Because you're right. One of the big things about this, well, so you're right in the aspect that, like, Disney's in a position where what they can have is they can literally have an algorithm set up and an AI team working, blah, 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 that they are the ones responsible for feeding, right? But even the ones that are free online, right? Even those are technically boxed off, right? We talked a little bit about this early on with ChatGPT in particular, about how people were treating it as if it was pulling from everywhere on the internet, and everybody's like, well, we're going to teach it to say racist things and shit like that. And we found out that you can't do that because they've actually cut it off from the internet at large. That's why iterations get put out, because they're still trying to teach it things, but they are trying to make sure that they're teaching it the quote unquote right things. They don't want it to feed on a bunch of just, like, racist, sexist bullshit on the internet, because lo and behold, anytime they let AI go buck wild on the internet, it turns into a Nazi in 3 days, right? Like, so they don't want that. So they're trying to make sure that they're teaching it what they want it to know, and then releasing iterations. And so you'll see sometimes people will say, I generated this on a chat GPT prompt from this version number. And that's important because a different version number could give you a different result depending on what the system knows. So even those are in a like we have this false sense that it's pulling from the entire internet, but that is something we need to kind of really back away from. We need to understand that there are limits to what it's pulling from, because when do those limits start to become a legal question? Because as you said, if Disney is just dumping a bunch of Disney Marvel stuff that they own the rights to into a machine and getting Disney Marvel results out, that's great. So does Disney then get to say, like, hey, like WB, Time Warner, when you guys create your algorithm, whatever company you use, they don't have the right to put Pixar scripts into it. So you can't use Pixar scripts to generate your kids' movies. Like, and that's one side of it. What happens when artists in the future are signing contracts with companies saying, like, like say I'm a writer, and say I'm a big writer, say I'm Quentin Tarantino, who writes his own movies all the time, right? And he walks in the room and he says, part of my contract is you cannot put Tarantino scripts into your algorithm for your AI generated script writing. Like at some point, like there's going to be so many people claiming A, B, and C, what you can and can't do, that we're going to have huge gaps in what this AI is pulling from. And like, who gets to decide how those gaps are formed? The big question that I was wondering is, like, if I'm a company in LA and I'm going to start an AI generated script company, and we're very transparent about what we're doing, we're very open, we want everybody to understand like where the art's coming from, blah blah blah. And I say in my good-hearted nature, meaning fully good intentions when I do this, I say we are not going to feed our algorithm scripts from the likes of Roman Polanski or Woody Allen, because we are just morally opposed to them as artists. Not a huge leap, right? This is something we could probably hear about. That is huge gaps on an ethics call by me, the creator, not the world. Like I get to say that, right? Now, what if somebody with not so good intentions is in charge of one of these things at some point, and they start to do things like we're only going to feed it scripts written by white people because we're sick of all of this like inclusion bullshit, right? And now suddenly you have
you have erasure of black right? voices in cinema.
Right. So like, yeah, there's going to be like this conversation is going to need to happen, and I fear that with all technology, it's going to happen too late. Like the well's already going to be poisoned by the time we're trying to figure out how to make sure we're getting good water out of it, right? Like we're going to be fucked.
Well, and that's not a irrational fear, Sejan, because AI has been brought up by the Writers Guild long before they decided to strike in May of 2023. They've been trying, much like with the streaming issues that prompted the writer's strike of 2007, they'd been trying to introduce it, trying to get ahead of it before it becomes a problem. Like, when it comes down to the fact that, like, this is such a big issue, we have to strike over it, it's already too late. Right. Like, we're already technically living in that world where we should have been addressing what AI is populated with in terms of its experiences.
Yeah. Like I said, like there's a really interesting spin to Disney wanting to use AI generated art for its Skrull TV show. I think there is something cool to talk about in that regard, but at the end of the day, it is just not going to justify at this time and space them doing this, right? Because they're just opening a fucking floodgate in the middle of just all of this other mess. I don't know. Like I said, like I said when we first started this conversation, I don't know when these decisions were made. Right? We'll never truly know. This was all behind the scenes stuff. I cannot imagine somebody saw what was going on and thought, we could use AI, but in a good way. And like, I don't think anybody's that stupid. I feel like this must have been a decision made a long time ago, and it was just poor timing that it ends up now being part of all this, right?
I mean, the question that I have is, why do we know it was generated by an AI? How do we know that information? Who went out and said it? Is it something that people watched that opening and thought, well, there's no way a human did this? Or is it like they went on record somewhere as saying our opening is generated by AI? And the reason why I bring that up is because even if it was generated by an AI like 2 years ago, 2 years ago when they were putting together Secret Invasion, Mainline VFX, in order to get this contract, says, here's what we're thinking based off of like their own stuff that they currently have. Imagine if we had access to the entire library of scroll images that are owned by Marvel Disney.
Just to clarify, I think they're using like a mainline like algorithm, but it's Method Studios is technically the artist group that put the art. And I'm putting quotes around artist group. I don't want like don't come at me. I'm not on Twitter.
That's
so
fine. I appreciate. I wasn't sure. Yeah. I know that I'm really keyed into who does the end credits because I love yelling scarlet letters if they did the end crawl when I'm in the movie theater.
Yeah.
So I was like, who did the opening? Because I'm very curious.
Right. Yeah. So to kind of address like how do we know it's AI generated? There's a couple of different things going on in that conversation in particular regarding that. First of all, there's a lot of people that swear up and down they can just tell. And it has been confirmed since. So like they were right. So like I can't sit here and shit on them for that, but there are people that swear that they can tell when AI generated art is in front of them. That does lead to a bunch of bullshit online where people are like, will post their actual art and people are like, oh, this is AI generated. And then they get like fucking pitchforks drawn on them. But then they're able to like provide receipts to show that like, nope, I did this all myself, guys. And it really makes a lot of people look like idiots in that regard.
So number one is the trust me, bro argument, which you also just showed how easy it is to systematically destroy that argument. But in this time, it has been proven correct. Which is really so the danger of the trust me bro argument. But continue.
Right. So that's like kind of, I think that's like kind of the surface level thing to keep in mind is that there were a huge bunch of people that just jumped on this thing that were like, it's AI art. And then a bunch of people were like, actually it kind of is, isn't it? And yeah, so we found out it is. But the other side of it is also there's been so much going on in streaming in particular in terms of the ways in which art has kind of been in like I don't know the best way to you know, like Destiny just got in trouble for this too, right? So like this is not just a streaming service thing. This is happening in all sorts of media where people will hire outside consulting firms, blah blah blah, to put together shit like this, and that outside firm may not be as ethical as the main company or may not be as good at their job as the main company, and they accidentally pull from art that is not justified, right? So what happened with Destiny is that they consulted an outside artist to do a cutscene, and in that cutscene a piece of art, a piece of fan art for Destiny was used. And when they went to that consulting firm, because the artist came out on Twitter and was like, hey, y'all stole my art, Destiny, at Bungie, you know, and Bungie was like, we're going to look into this. And they like quickly did. They found out that the outside consulting firm had gotten that piece of art tied up with a whole bunch of other shit as inspirational. And they didn't understand that it wasn't from Bungie. So like, it was just like a miscommunication with the consulting firm that worked outside because they used a piece of art they thought was from Bungie, but Bungie had only really shown them as like inspirational work, which is like, whatever, it's probably somebody covering their ass, but somehow they had gotten it and they were under the impression it was official art. So that's why they used it, right? And it's like, and Bungie made like this quick apology about it. They actually like paid the actual artist a bunch of money so they could continue to use it, and they like talked about how good it was on Twitter, like they boosted the guy and stuff. So they did, you know, they did right by the artist in the end when they figured out what had happened, right? In that same regard, there's people on the lookout for that shit everywhere because it's happened so many times. You know, Netflix has a huge problem with this with a lot of their specifically opening credits stuff, you know, or Disney Marvel got into a whole bunch of shit with this with the opening credits for Hawkeye, remember? And everybody was like, man, look at this Matt Fraction art. And Matt Fraction came out and was like, yeah, they didn't pay me anything. I didn't approve any of this. They just stole my style. So like people are weirdly attuned to this kind of specific thing, is the ways in which cutscenes and opening credits and like like art used in the background, people are calling shit out left and right now. You know, I think it has to do with that like that gotcha moment that everybody on social media seems to want to have nowadays, where they like catch the big guys fucking up real bad, where they'll like point at something and be like, that's AI generated, you didn't use real art here. And like, as I said, this time around, they turned out to be right, which is just going to be fuel for the fire going forward.
I mean, and it's really just sort of the evolution of everything that you're talking about, but they love to point out when like a logo for something is clearly just the first Google image if you search for that thing, and then it's suddenly Disney selling my fan art, and just as an example, in their parks on their thing without ever having licensed it for me. Because that person, it's
And this whole conversation is part of the reason I don't think AI is ever going to take off in, say, like the music industry. I might, I'll be wrong. I'll be back here in a week talking about how the first AI generated song from Justin Timberlake came out this week or
I'm
whatever.
gonna have to disagree with you, Sejan, because Paul McCartney has already gone on record as saying he used AI to finish a song. I have
Right.
to be
But
honest with you.
but to your point earlier, Paul McCartney feeding a bunch of Paul McCartney music into his shit and getting a result on the end is one thing. But if an entire company comes out and says we are just going to be AI generated music, we're just not going to have an artist on site, we're just going to have a bunch of prompt feeders and copy editors and shit like that to get music out the other end and shit, like people are going to say, well, what are you putting into it? And in the music industry, like those right, I mean, like we live in the era in which the Marvin Gaye estate, like God rest the poor man's soul, his estate is doing him fucking dirty, is willing to sue like Ed Sheeran over a 3 chord progression that everybody in the fucking industry uses. I mean, they successfully sued Katy Perry for Dark Horse.
Yeah.
And like in retrospect, a lot of people are like, they probably shouldn't have won that case, but like there was really not a it was like such a gray area that they won that one and then they lost the Ed Sheeran one a few years later, and so people are just kind of just like, we still don't know where we stand with this, like, with all of this shit, right? Like the pettiness with which the music industry will go after copyright stuff, I just don't think AI is ever going to be able to put a strong foothold in.
Yeah.
One major artist like Paul McCartney being able to get away with murder is like not a sign that there's like a violent epidemic, right? Like,
Well, the two things are, it wasn't Paul McCartney feeding in a bunch of Paul McCartney. It was Paul McCartney using John Lennon stuff to finish a John Lennon demo. So like it's one step like weirdly grossly removed, but then also after going on record as saying, "Oh, we used AI and you're gonna have a new Beatles song," he walked it back to be like, well, that's not really what we did. We just kind of tried to use the buzzword of the time to do it. Now, admittedly, that discussion happened the day after all of the issues with Secret Invasion using an AI credit sequence. So who knows if that was just PR being like, let's control what you said, Sir McCartney.
yeah, yeah. Well, and see, that gets really gross because in that regard, you get really close to the things that we've talked about with the ways of which generated actors who have passed away being put on screen, right?
Yeah.
Like it's basically that, just in the music form. We're gonna make John Lennon's voice say some things he didn't actually say is fucking gross.
Yeah. I mean, there's that movie to talk about that, Trust Me, Marlin, I think is the name of it. I have other stuff up that I wanted to talk about. That is a documentary narrated by Marlon Brando. And they admitted that they found the tapes because Marlon Brando, near the end of his life, was going just kind of nuts and started recording himself. Listen to Me, Marlon. It's a 2015 documentary. And they said that most of it is just from actual tapes that he existed with footage that we found or that we created. But there were moments in it where we did manipulate the recordings to make him say things. And it's just like, that's so weird. I mean, that documentary, as interesting as it is into like the final years of Marlon Brando, what it means in the year 2023 for what they did for a film that I don't think ever really got like wide release. It was a darling
a lot
at
of traction, shall we say?
yeah. It would I the fact that I saw it in a theater blew me away, but the room that I saw it in had 28 seats and was no deeper than like my living room.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, this is a 700 seat auditorium that we're playing it in. So
and then compare that to, weirdly, just echoes in time. Compare that to the Val Kilmer documentary, without having to talk about the island of Dr. Moreau for either of their sakes. But like compare that to the Val Kilmer documentary that I came out only just like last year, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's actually his son doing the voiceover as him. But the difference being that Val is there, like he's present, and like these words are ones that he is able to agree upon, right? Like he is not gone. He is, so it's not impossible to for him to step in and say no, like I don't want this to be said in my voice, right? But it is done with the intention that you fall into believing that it is him speaking, not least of which because the son sounds just fucking like him. It's wild. But like this whole idea that it is not his voice saying those words, but it has a whole other swing to it because he is present, right? And it's a really weird conversation to have between that and what you're talking about with the Marlon Brando one, where he is not around to say yay or nay to what's being done to his voice in that regard.
Yeah, and they were private things, and maybe he didn't think they were going to be used that way. But then there's also the straight out of Compton argument, where that film is very, I'm going to call it G-rated. It's not a G-rated film by any means, but because Dre and Cube were alive to like veto or approve what went into that film, there are a lot of people who are like, I'm interested in the film that comes out about NWA's story after there is no like editorializing by people who are around. Because they're hanging people over balconies by their ankles and things like that. That are just like, we're going to shave off that edge, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, and I think that's the bigger kind of secret about all of this, right? Is like what AI is doing in a lot of places is it's shining a light on a lot of influences and biases that otherwise we take for granted. This is not me saying that AI is saving us from anything. Like, I think AI has a ton of its own ethical issues. It's just different ethical issues than humans have. So it's interesting to me that we can't seem to get away from art being generated by a thing that has some huge like moral complications along with it. I think that's just part of the nature of art in general, right? But the people that are touting the use of AI as something that's going to save us from people that cannot be trusted, right? In terms of quality, in terms of what they do behind the scenes and all of that sort of stuff, those people seem to be ignoring all of the ethical implications of using that stuff. But I think it is also important to note that anybody on the other side of the conversation that doesn't want us to use AI is in some cases and in some circles trying to claim that there's too many ethical complications with AI to justify using it, to which I would point out that humans also are very ethically flawed. Like, so that can't be the foundation of the argument, because you're just arguing against yourself at that point. Find a better foundation, because they exist. There are definitely better foundations in which you can argue against the use of AI. But anybody out there that is starting from a place of, I just don't like the ethics of AI, you're ignoring then the ethics of humanity, which is like just as murky.
Yeah. So I've been toying with sharing a story, and you just queued me up for this segue into it about the murky ethics of like creativity and, oh, AI is so bad. Here's the story. I wrote a movie called Slether. The film finally released in 2010, but we completed the first draft of that script in 2005. That script, this is a 13-year-old film, and now the script itself is almost 20 years old, features a joke in which a party clown or party magician does balloon animals. And rather than, make dogs and cats and bears and things, he just hands over the blown up balloon animal and is like, here's your snake, here's your worm, here's your pencil, right? Like, and they thought this was the funniest thing. This is something that existed in the script before I joined the project, and it was something that they insisted had to stay in the script. So that's the thing. Really, it was kind of the one thing that they had like defined as this is what's going to happen in the film when they brought it to me and said, "Can you collaborate on this with us?"
This 5-minute bit has to stay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
This is the thing that, and we're like, we've never seen anything like it before. Fast forward to 2006, and the 12th episode of My Name Is Earl, called "Oh Karma, Where Art Thou?" happens to feature Jon Favreau. I really would like to know who Jon Favreau is now, but I'm losing track. I don't want to get distracted from this. Jon Favreau is playing a fast food restaurant manager, and Earl did him dirty, so he's going to make up to him for being the list. And one of the things that he has to do in this episode is dress up as like the mascot of the fast food franchise and hand out balloon animals. And so there's Jason Lee doing the same bit of, I don't know, it's a caterpillar, right? Go play with it. Maybe it'll turn into a butterfly. Like that type of thing. So at the time, I am working at Walmart. It is the Saturday after this episode of My Name is Earl has aired. I have not seen the episode. That's just the thing that I wanted to add to it. I receive a call from my mother saying, you need to go on break right now and call the guys from Slether, because they just showed up at the house livid, wanting to tear you a new one. And I told them that you were away and that I would get in touch with you. I did not tell them you're at work because I don't want them to show up there and act the way that they just acted at our house. And so, like, I'm freaked out a little bit. I have no fucking clue what this could be about. But I am at work. At the time, this job is how I'm affording to, like, pay for the next semester of college. So, like, I can't jeopardize it. And it's, like, a scary call to get, like, these guys just showed up at the house, livid, wanting to talk to you. And they know where I work, so there is this chance that they could show up. So I go on break, and I call from the payphone outside of the Walmart. I'm on my 15-minute break. I call him, and he tears into me wanting to know who I contacted at My Name is Earl to give them our joke.
What? Who the fuck do they think you are?
I don't know. But, like, neither one. We were watching the show offhandedly, and then suddenly, there's our balloon animal joke. And, like, things had gone they'd gone pretty bad. The ultimatum was delivered to me. You need to make the decision, Devin. Are you going to work on making this film with us, or are you going to continue to pursue your college degree? This is said to me by somebody who had dropped out of high school and would later get his GED, and somebody else who in his senior year of college dropped out of college to focus on making this film. I'm a freshman in college at the time, and I'm like, you know what? I'm probably going to finish my degree. Because, you know, first of all, here's a pro tip from Devin Decker. If someone gives you an ultimatum, always pick the choice that doesn't involve them. Like,
that's a good rule of thumb.
That's a pretty good rule of thumb. Now, granted, there are situations and things like that, but in the ultimatum of it's either us or your education, my education, there was like an 80% chance it was never going to give me an ultimatum, so I chose my education. And with that, they, like, cut ties with me completely because I was no longer dedicated to the project.
Well, and, you know, as far as they were concerned, you were going to do fine off of your millions of dollars selling a joke to My Name is Earl
right.
in your freshman year in college.
That phone call, it was my sophomore year. But still, that phone call, I mean, the only reason I bring it up is because, like, it's so alive in my mind. But, like, there's the whole question of ethics, right? Like, they're like, you came on to write this movie with us, you freaking collected all our jokes, and then you sold it to Hollywood. Like, that's where their minds were. Because of the paranoia that exists in the ethics of writers' rooms. And we're freaking nobodies from that. And I'm just like, you need to calm down and listen to yourself. I did not contact Greg Garcia and be like, I got the joke that's going to make My Name is Earl stand out. You're never going to end this show on a cliffhanger that's unresolved. Because this joke going to make you $1 million every day for the rest of your life, Greg Garcia. You're insane. This is an insane thing that you just did.
Bill Hader sitting in your fucking set and between shoots on Barry, shooting out like shit to the writers' room at SNL, being like, you know, it'd be funny if you made Joss say this shit.
Yeah,
like that's just not the life you lead.
That's not. I'm working at a fucking Walmart.
I'm trying to be as kind as I can to just be like, yeah, like who the fuck did they think you were?
Yeah, but it's one of those situations where, like, there was no ethical pinnacle in writing beforehand to the fact that that level of paranoia existed for 3 amateur screenwriters in the state of Rhode Island 20 years ago. Oh, man. Like, yeah, that's one that has always stuck with me. I'm just like, think about what you just asked. Don't show up in my house yelling about stuff. I did not do that. You guys think that joke is so good. It really was never the best joke that you guys came up with. It was a funny scene, but, like, it's not going to the moon. It's not breaking gravitational pull of Earth. it's kind of
Well,
right
and I
there.
think that that's where we're at with some of this stuff with the not specifically actual AI generated art, but as we kind of hinted at, this kind of culture that's developed now, where the second any artist out there puts anything out into the world, whether it's a film, a music, a television, or art on Twitter, or you know whatever they're doing online, like there is now and probably forever going to now be this contingency of people that are going to claim that it's AI generated. That's going to claim, you know, there already were people that were always going to be like, I don't know, this is very much in the style of this other artist that died 20 years ago that only had like 3 pieces of art that I happened to buy. So I think maybe you stole this. Like exactly what you're talking about. This like level at which you're just like, think about what you're saying. Think about the amount of steps that would need to take place in order for somebody to actually do what you said, and realize how many of those steps are just statistical impossibilities. Calm down. Like the idea that two artists on either side of the world can come up with the same idea at roughly the same time and put it out there is not an impossible feat. I mean, like you know, history is full of shit like this too. Think about shit like the printing press and all of these things about how like Gutenberg created the print, you know, and all this shit. And then we found out that actually over in Asia they had the printing press for a while. And then there's these conversations of, well, did he just catch wind of it and created it based off of that? Does that mean that like it's stolen creation? And like this starts to get into some really deep conversations, dark conversations about the ways in which like this kind of innovation moves forward, right? And so that's where we're at right now with AI. And the problem is like all things in history, we are starting to really truncate these things because because of the web and things like this, we're able to have these conversations much quicker and much louder than we ever were before. So like all of this shit is going to just happen all at once with all of these ethical conversations and moral conversations are going to happen, and they should. Like we should really knock this shit out, but we need to take it a little bit slower, I think, in the punishment phase. We need to calm the fuck down on the punishment phase for a moment while we still figure out what we are and aren't okay with ethically and morally as a society regarding this, because we're going to end up getting mad at and punishing some people that just straight up don't deserve it. And I'd rather a few people get away with putting some AI art in the world that they maybe shouldn't have. I'd rather that happen than we stop the people that are honestly creating shit out there right now. And like I don't want to stomp on those people. I don't, you know, I don't want to put them up at the cost of, right? Like it just doesn't, that's just not the way I want it to operate, you know, but who the fuck am I?
I mean, you're not wrong though. That's the type of thing that also stifles progression. If
Right.
if you're creating things, right, and the immediate response is that was generated by an AI, and whether it was or it wasn't, that person's probably not going to create anymore. And eventually,
Yeah,
when you have enough people who are afraid to create, no one is going to try their hand at creating. Like, why would I even attempt that? Like, that's the most likely outcome.
Right. But you know, again, we like just to it's important to know that that is also the conversation on the other side of this, right?
Yeah.
Is as somebody that creates regular art and is seeing AI eat it up and shit out a lesser version of it and being more successful, that's also going to stifle things, right? So like we need to find a balance, and we need to like find some good ethical, like, you know, standards of practice in this shit. You know, like one of the big things that I have always said from the beginning is that first and foremost, we just need to make sure people are being clear and honest when shit is created. So like to bookend all the way back to the question, how do people even know that the Marvel stuff was AI generated? I'm happy that they owned it as quick as they did and that we know as much as we do. I'm happy about the transparency, because that is key for me. I don't mind that it's AI generated because we're able to talk about the fact that we know it's AI generated. Now, the next step in that transparency, to your point, is I would like to know where it came from. You know, what algorithm did they use? I don't know. I'm not saying I need to see the fucking thing in front of me, but I need somebody to be able to explain to me, like, no, we just put a bunch of Marvel stuff in, or we just put in a bunch of pictures from even just the production. This was all, we fed it a bunch of our like our pre-planned like sketches just to see, you know, like that kind of stuff, you know, like that'd be cool. Now if they come out and they say like, oh, we just use the internet, like then there's definitely some problems there, right? Yeah, transparency, I think, is going to be the very first big step that we really need to take with this shit. Because as long as everybody understands where the art's coming from, then and we can trust that we know that this is made by a person. Okay, this one is made by an AI, but we also know what the AI is feeding off of. Like, as long as that transparency is there, that's like 90% of the problem for me.
Yeah. I guess for me, what I always wanted to know, and I haven't been able to find this out, so I was hoping that maybe in your exploration of the topic, you knew this. Was it proactive, them going out saying, like, we used AI to generate this title sequence, or was it reactive to claims from the internet? Because if it's
I feel like from what I have seen, just to quickly clarify this, is it seems a lot more like they weren't hiding it, but they also didn't just say it. There may even be something. I mean, for all we know, like, because I didn't watch to the end, maybe there's something in the credits that just gave it away, right? Like, I would have to go and look into that. But at the very least, I have seen people that accuse it of being AI and then like being justified. So it feels like it was reactive, but not reactive in like, well, I guess we got to come clean, but more in the fact of like, I don't think they ever felt like they were hiding it. Like, I don't think that they thought it was a thing they needed to you know, to cover up in any way. Like, I think it was just somebody said, that's AI generated. And they were like, yeah. And now everybody's like, AI generated art. And they like didn't realize like the fucking like can of worms they were opening when they used it. Which is just goes to show you.
But also, if you're seeing like a discourse, if you're seeing a discourse online of people discussing whether or not something is AI generated, and you just want that to stop, like, this isn't what we want people to be talking about on the show. We want people to be talking about the Samuel Jackson in a TV show of it all. Like, them coming out and being like, if the headline read, Disney Marvel confirms Secret Invasion title sequence was generated using AI art. That is the type of reactive that I want to hope that it was. I want to hope that they didn't think in the midst of the writer's strike, you know what's going to get eyes on our show? Telling people that we used AI in it. Because that's just the level of not thinking it through that I'm not prepared for.
I don't see anybody out there celebratory, like saying like, hey, guess what we did? Like, I'm just not seeing that.
Yeah,
but
no.
it could also be the bubbles that we're in, you know?
Yeah,
but I don't think
that is an unfortunate truth of that as well. But I guess my last thing, if you too long didn't listen, of it all is nobody sat down and typed into a computer, generate a Secret Invasion title sequence, and that was what was spit out.
Right.
There was other work being there. Sejin is not wrong about the fact that something that may have been 20 people before could get dropped down to 2 individuals doing that work, and then what happens to those 18 other visual effects artists. But there was definitely still a bit of the human touch in order to generate that. We're not living in a world yet where it just happened on its own. Also thinking of the fact that, like, that's just the visuals. You still have somebody who has to put the music over it, who has to pace it. Like, it's just so weird to be like, it was AI generated. And I'm like, yeah, but it was AI generated in the way that we say that AI will be a tool to be used by humans who understand how to use it, much like what calculators were.
Yeah.
It's not AI generated in the fact that, all right, well, we don't need to worry about the title sequence because, you know, the title sequence 2000's taking care of that.
Well, you know, like I think about like in terms of the moral optics of the conversation, right? Like, I think about out here, we are at that time of the year where the desert's starting to dry out like fucking crazy, and we are getting close to the 4th of July. So there's no fireworks zones, right? And every year you hear about some person that burns their house down because they're technically in a fireworks zone, but like, we all know, like, hey, it's a really dry day, don't set off fireworks. It's been really bad out. There's been a couple of forest fires in the area. Like, today is not the day to set off fireworks. But because they are in a place where it is technically legally allowed, they do it anyway, and then, you know, there goes half the neighborhood because of a house fire that they started with a firework landing in the wrong place on a really dry day. And it's like, there's this moral understanding, there's this societal knowledge that you need to possess in order to do things safely. Just because there may not be a legal like ramification for it does not mean that it is just allowed, right? This does not mean that it's just okay to do, right? And we need to find that. We need to find that societal understanding of what we're okay with and what we're not. And there's always going to be people that are on the fringes of that. There's going to be people that are more okay with one thing or less okay with a thing. And like that's fine. But right now, there isn't even a standard for people to like measure their ethics against. So we need to find that. But we're not gonna find that if people keep getting in the way of us finding that. And that's coming from all sides. Like I hate being a centrist on any issue. And I really do firmly stand more on the side of artists more than anything else in this conversation. I think we need to fucking chill on the AI usage. I think what Disney did was stupid. They should not have done that. There's definitely ways they could have worked with artists to get the same kind of effects they're talking about that didn't involve AI. There's just there's this other side to this conversation where people are just like ganging up on actual artists on Twitter, and we're seeing like people out there who are openly saying, hey, like this is an AI generated art web page, so you're coming here, you know what you're coming for, and people attack those places. And it's like, god damn it, like they're creating a space where they're being very transparent about what they're doing. Those are not the spaces to start calling people out on shit, right? Like these people, more than anything, these people are probably on your side when it comes to this sort of stuff. They just feel like they've got this ethical way of approaching it that other people aren't using, right? And we just need to make sure that we're aiming all of our vitriol at this stuff at the right target. And to be fair, as I've been saying, we don't know what that target is yet. But that doesn't mean we just start fucking firing, you know,
wildly.
into
Yeah.
right. So we need to figure this stuff out, and it starts at an individual level. Like people really need to start kind of looking into this stuff more. And so, you know, maybe that's what we're seeing with the Disney stuff and all this is a lot more people being much more self-aware of what's around them, which is good. I mean, that's good.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's probably what we should do with more things in life. Like, it's also weird that we'll have these discussions about a piece of entertainment, and that sort of acts as a distraction when we could be applying that same reasoning to other things in our lives that deserve that level of discussion.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, you start getting into some real big philosophical conversations about like what is life, the pursuit of happiness, my friends.
Right. I don't know. Any other negative things to talk about before we go further? I mean, Ocean Gate and the Titan submersible, and just the weird week that represented. But I just got my sight back. I don't want to go blind with rage again. But that whole thing was just.
I will say this: there were a lot of people that were affected by that and will be affected by that going forward that don't deserve the tragedy of that, and the people online that want to kind of just laugh at everybody in this situation just because they're quote unquote billionaires, which is a weird way to look at the world. But I'm not on board with that shit, but there are definitely some evil motherfuckers in that story. And I think we're going to learn more and more about some of the really problematic shit about this kind of stuff. You know, it's the nightmare scenario. And I think the reason that people are latching onto it as much as they are is because this is the kind of stuff that I don't want to say want, but it really feels like what they want to see happen with guys like Elon trying to go to the moon, right? Is there this kind of like terrible tragedy that just proves that, you know, it was a shit endeavor. Like that's what they've always wanted to see from something like SpaceX or hell, think about the ways that people talk about Teslas and self-driving Teslas killing, like getting into accidents and killing people. And like, that's the way that they want to like frame that conversation. I feel like there's a lot of people, a lot of fucking vultures out there that are taking advantage of this conversation to take aim at a certain style of person in the world. You know, your Musks. I mean, even to that point, like Bill Gates, you know, you put Zuckerberg in there, Bezos in his like race to the moon against Musk and stuff like that, right? Like they want these people to learn a lesson. And unfortunately, with the things that they're doing, you know, this is the lessons that people think they're going to end up learning. I don't know. It's really gross the way that some people are reacting to it. But I also want to say that, like you, there's a lot of anger that I have. Right? There's more than enough to go around. But I've tried to divorce myself from a lot of the stuff that people have been talking about with it, because a lot of people have really taken it to an extreme that I don't love.
Yeah, I guess the weird thing for me was once it was announced that, you know, that there was no hope anymore. There's a good chance that this submersible imploded and they were like dead at that moment. like my mother was talking about it, and she hadn't known anything until she heard that on the news, right? The breaking news report while the like baseball game was on to tell us that like this is the outcome of what was happening. And then when I informed her of some of the things that she did not know about it, she's like, well, I didn't want to follow it beforehand because it just seemed like this weird thing everybody was talking about, and I just kind of wanted to divorce myself from it. And I'm like, and that's, I understand that, right? It became this like everywhere on social media thing, everybody has an opinion thing. But then once you hear the outcome, like there, you should also know some of that other stuff that happened about it. Because at the same, it's tragic that lives were lost. That's undeniable. Nobody's life should be cut off like early is what I'm going to say, which opens up all sorts of philosophical stuff. Because like, what is your time on Earth? Is it when you pass away, the plan of some sort of otherworldly force, or things like that? Maybe it happened right on time. Weird type of philosophical. I'm like crazying myself right now, and I'm sorry about that. But like, she was unaware of the quality of the submersible and the fact that it was kind of just a tube with the mirror, with the window in the front. Because she thought of the sub from the movie Titanic. Yeah. At the beginning of Titanic, where there's like 8 people in it and they have that huge viewing window. She's like, that's what I thought it was. And then when I showed her what it actually was, she's like, oh my God, like, why would you get in that? And I'm like, that's sort of the question that people have been asking all week.
Yeah.
Like
it's why people can't seem to stop talking about it, is because there's this fascinating thing of like, we all pretty much know for sure that if we were in the situation where somebody offered this to us, right, where they said, hey, we're going to do this thing, we are all pretty much on the same page as a society that we would be like, no, no matter how much money we have in the world, no, we're not doing that. And, you know, there's a certain group of people out there that want to be contrarian and say like, well, you know, like they're thrill seekers. They just want to do this A, B, and C. And it's like, I get that. And that's definitely a lifestyle. You know, there are people out there that skydive, and I don't get those people. There are people out there that'll do fucking free solo shit and like, you know, and climb up buildings. I mean, look at the ways in which we praise guys like Tom Cruise for the insane shit he does for Mission Impossible movies, right? Like, it's not that I disagree with that lifestyle, but this goes beyond that. Because this isn't like, oh, this person's doing a very daring thing that, like, you need to be very well trained to do. This was literally the people trained to do this were saying, don't do this, and these people just didn't listen. And I say these people, but, like, we know for sure, at least the guy that ran the company and was on the sub, like, he for sure said, didn't listen, straight up fired a guy that would, like, at his own company that was trying to tell him not to do this fucking thing, right? So, like, fuck that guy. Now, we don't know how he pitched this shit to anybody else on board, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're all contacting him, trying to get information from him about safety measures and concepts and all this stuff, and like to give everybody kind of an idea of how they were really covering over some of the truth, or maybe stretching the truth a bit in what they were talking about, what they were doing. One of the big things I keep seeing people say about the company, about why you might trust this company, is that they report to have done multiple trips for years successfully down to the Titanic. Now, technically, all the words in that sentence are true, but what they have done is they've been in operation since, well, they've been in operation for a while, but they've had successful trips since 2021. So multiple years is correct. We are now on 2 years of them having had successful trips. And even the word trips is tricky because it was really just once a year they had successful. So they had 2 successful trips over a matter of 2 years. But because of that, they get to use wording like, we have had many successful trips over years. So we know what we're doing. And people are just like, oh, okay. Like, because that's an answer, right? To the question. We just don't think about the fact that those words are actually being, there's a lot of heavy lifting going on in that sentence.
You got to read between the words in that statement to get the full picture.
Right.
Because so also of those many successful trips, it's going down and coming back up. But we didn't go down all the way to the Titanic. We went down like 37 feet and then said, we have to resurface. But we resurfaced. That was a successful trip.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the
Like,
stuff that's come out about trips that they've had to cancel or change on and reasons why, or I mean, even the quote unquote successful trips, people from those specific outings have come out and said, yeah, it was kind of a shit show the day we were there. Like one guy who was on the one from I believe 2022 was talking about the idea that like it was supposed to be a 2.5 hour journey to the bottom and back up, and when all was said and done, it took them about 10.5 hours because they kept having to resurface because things weren't going right. Right. And I think he straight up used the term kamikaze mission. Like, I was like, why did you stay on then? Like, the second they came up for the first time and said something was wrong, I would have noped the fuck out. I wouldn't have been on there in the first place, let's be honest.
Yeah.
But, like, if I was on it and then they were like 30 feet down and they were like, something's not right, let's go back up and and shore up, I'd be like, yeah, that's okay. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye. Like,
I think about that with the people who climb Everest, like with the Sherpa or like the guided sort of corporate trips to the top of Everest.
right.
I mean, the first frozen body that you just climb past, I
Right.
think I'm going to turn around at base camp, at the next camp. I think
Yeah.
I've gone far enough.
Yeah, I
'Cause-
don't know.
'cause,
Like
it-
I said, I understand that there is
humbling, right?
a type of person in the world that seeks out this kind of adventure. I would say though that I I don't know if I like are they looking for any type of sympathy when these kinds of accidents occur in that regard? Like because I have to imagine that living that kind of lifestyle, you kind of have to accept the fact that people are not going to have sympathy if something goes wrong, right?
I mean, look at Bodhi in Point Break, right? They're just trying to live their lives with 100% pure adrenaline, right? Have this endless summer fueled by Robin Banks. But the difference between Bodhi and Patrick Swayze's character and the other members of that crew is the fact that for him, he's so zen about his lifestyle that like when he is done, when the way he's living ends his life, he understands that it is his time. But there's that moment where the one guy gets shot where it's like very obviously those three guys didn't realize just how much their lives are at stake the entire time they were following him as their leader.
Right. Like it didn't really register for them like what this lifestyle actually entailed.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to think about like things like we can talk about thrill seekers all we want, but there was a 19-year-old kid on that fucking thing.
Yeah.
He didn't know what he was doing with his life. Like who the fuck at 19 has the wherewithal to make a decision like I'm going to put my life on the line for this trip, right? Like that's crazy to me.
And again, I think a big part of it is 1997 Titanic. You see submersibles that go down as far as the Titanic is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would the technology for a submersible vehicle not have gotten better since 1997?
Well, and to be clear, it has. Like,
Yeah.
that's the big thing,
Yeah.
right? Is like that technology has gotten better. This motherfucker wasn't using it. He was convinced that he could do it cheaper with his own developed shit rather than buying in to the James Cameron special, right? Like that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because like it's not like this idea of a submersible vehicle that has, people on it that aren't used to this kind of lifestyle, but they're like that exists in the world. That is a thing that already happens. It's just that this company, they all thought they could do it better in a way, and they've proven this week that they couldn't. Like, and that just sucks.
And it
It's
sucks
just a
that
tragedy.
unfortunately there is a loss of life with that. I'll say it, but I do hope that we learn from it. And also, if you want proof of inflation, this is something as going through it. In 2021, the cost of going on one of these expeditions was $125,000, and that has doubled to $250,000.
Yeah, I don't know how much
Like,
that's inflation and how much they were just like, well, shit, we didn't expect to have to keep rebuilding this thing every time. Like, it's
yeah.
the whole situation is like I said, is a tragedy, and there's a certain sect of people out there that want to try and use that tragedy to point like some harsh fingers at things like the billionaire lifestyle and stuff, and I think that that's an important conversation to have, but when you're starting from a place of like maliciously laughing at the failure of this thing, you've already lost the argument, right? You're like, the debate is just not is not going to happen. So like, yes, we should talk about like billionaires trying to like spend a bunch of money on these frivolous missions as opposed to, like helping other human beings eat. Like I think that is definitely something worth talking about. But it's really hard to have that conversation when the guy next to you is laughing like a hyena.
Yeah, when you're on the Schadenfreude pedestal for your introduction to the debate, it's hard to take you seriously because you're clearly coming from a place of glee when like maybe we're just trying to have a real conversation right now.
Right.
I don't know, but it was such a huge thing. And now like I have a segue that I want to use, but I'm not going to use it because it would be in poor taste. Yeah.
Oh man.
Cuz
what? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, you know what? I'm gonna jump into it. I mean, I can't think of any other losses or like semi-negative topics that we should address this week. Is there anything else that you can think of before we transition into the W section of this episode?
Let's have some fucking
All
fun
right.
this week. Come on.
So it's been about 2 weeks since we recorded our last episode. And you might not know this, but June 12th was arbitrarily chosen as the Grimace's birthday. You know the Grimace. Big purple guy.
Yeah, which did we ever establish what he's supposed to be? Isn't he supposed to be like a Franken nugget or some shit?
Yeah,
Like,
so I always thought that, well, when he was initially introduced, he was a monster that stole milkshakes. He had 4 arms with which to steal the maximum amount of milkshakes, which I guess is 4.
Wasn't there some blow up a couple of years ago because some like McDonald's like employee of the year, like in his like employee of the year speech, like thanked Grimace the chicken McNugget or something like that. Like I'm trying to remember what the guy said. It wasn't chicken McNugget. I'm gonna be stuck on that for a while. But there was like a specific thing that he called Grimace out as being, and I can't remember what it is.
So a McDonald's executive. I was gonna address this. Like, yeah, I always thought he was a nugget that like kind of mutated and got big and now
That's
super nugget, right?
Yeah.
No, it's he fell into a nuclear silo and the Grimace was born, fueled by milkshakes. All conjecture on my part. Not what it is. An executive from McDonald's confirmed that Grimace is supposed to be a taste bud.
That's right. Yeah. If the dude up in this like McDonald's like executive like up in like Canada was like on the news and they were talking to him about Grimace for some reason, and he was just like, he's an enormous taste bud. He's just a giant taste bud that climbed out of your mouth. It's like, what?
Climbed out of your mouth, and he's named after I don't like this food. The Grimace touches McDonald's and instantly is like, fucking disgusting. Can we get some Chalet Swiss? Sticking with the Canada of it all. Yeah, so that's weird. But they're celebrating Grimace's birthday this June. And as much fun as his wild berry milkshake is, because that's the most important part about Grimace's birthday, you could buy a $70 pool toy, but like that just feels weird to have an inflatable Grimace, right?
Who am I, Steph Curry? No, that ain't shit ain't happening. Yeah, man, like I'm thinking back on that whole thing with the taste bud thing. Didn't McDonald's like to react to that? Didn't they say something like whether he's a taste bud or he's a milkshake? Not that he drinks milkshakes, but they like implied that there was a chance that he might be in fact just a living milkshake.
What the hell?
Yeah, it was really wild. They never put their foot down about what he is, right? But then all of a sudden this year, they're just like, fuck it, we love the big purple guy, whatever he may be. It feels a little bit like they're trying to capitalize on like the pride of it all.
Yeah, it's a little strange, is all that I'm gonna go on record of. But while I say it's strange that they're like McDonald's, instead of going rainbow for June, is going Grimace, and definitely erasing the fact that he used to be a thief. What stole milkshakes? I will never forget.
That's something that happened a while ago, though, right?
Like, I mean, that was when he was first introduced. In the 80s, where like McDonald Land became sort of this fun, happy place where the kids could go, and the only real villain was Captain Crook, the fish fillet guy.
Right.
Like... That's it. And even then, like, he's kind of a funny pirate. And Robble with the Hamburglar, and he's like, yeah, he steals hamburgers, but it's all a good fun. He gives them back after putting his gross hands on them. No,
I know that Grimace is introduced as a villain, but I grew up in the era of the Ronald McDonald cartoon show.
Yeah, of course.
In which case Grimace was a friend, and I think they met other Grimaces at one point, didn't
Well,
they?
he has an uncle named Uncle O'Grimacy,
Well, Uncle
who
O'Grimacy is
represents the Shamrock Shake.
Right. He like Uncle O'Grimacy, and the thing about Uncle O'Grimacy is he delivers the Shamrock Shake. Like they don't do the whole like he's come to steal the Shamrock Shakes thing. Like they probably would have if they wanted to keep the fiction up, right?
No, they needed French fries, so they needed potatoes, so they needed to keep on healthy relationships with the representatives of the O'Grimacy estate. Now what I'm thinking is that the milkshakes at McDonald are some sort of excretion from the Grimace population.
Slurm style Grimace
Yeah.
secretions. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I've drank so many Grimace
I was
shakes.
trying to think of a variation on Catan just with all McDonald's like over here you get French fries from this tile, you get milkshakes from this tile, you get hamburger from this tile, and you get chicken from this tile.
You know what? What is Birdie meant to represent? Because like
I mean, she has to be the chicken McNuggets, right?
Well, because she also hangs out with the McNugget buddies. So, like,
Right.
it kind of feels like Birdie's there and she's hanging out, and then her friend gets turned into chicken nuggets.
Exactly,
And then she's
exactly.
like, oh, silver lining, I'll be friends with the chicken nuggets. But you turn me into a chicken nugget, Ronald McDonald. I swear to fucking God. I have my journal, and I will send it out to every major publication.
Yeah.
Yes, Birdie is Rorschach, for anyone who missed that. I know you thought Night Owl, and that's where I would have gone initially, but no. Birdie is Rorschach.
No, that's the Hamburglar, right? No, wait, that's
The Hamburglar is probably the comedian. And I looked down and went, Robble, Robble. Oh, man, Watchman McDonald's is the funniest thing to me right now.
Oh man.
Jeez. But yeah, so Grimace celebrated his birthday this June on the 12th. And you know what we got in addition to a milkshake? The only other big thing that we got in addition to the Grimace milkshake, which is delicious.
There was the Grimace meal, right?
There was
that
the
came with like a whole bunch of food and a Grimace milkshake.
The
basically.
Grimace
It was just
meal is a Big Mac or a 10-piece chicken nugget, a medium fry, and a Grimace milkshake. It's not like you get to taste Grimace. It's not a purple bun, right? Thank God it's not Burger King. Yeah, with our special Grimace sauce. No, I'm out.
Don't
I'm
need
done.
that in my life, thank you.
No, thank you. It's just purple ketchup. You know what? No, you called it Grimace sauce, and I'm done now. No, what they did was the guys behind GB Studio, which is a way to make your own Game Boy games, were commissioned by McDonald's to create a brand new Game Boy Color game called
In the year
Grimace's
2023
Birthday.
of our Lord.
2023. Now, they didn't go full pickle, which is a little disappointing, because you know what they should have done? They should have been selling Grimace's Birthday cartridges at the McDonald's.
Yeah.
People would have bought them.
Would have been a oof.
But no, it is a flash. You can play it in a browser. It is a browser game, but they have extracted the elements from that browser and have found that it is an actual factual Game Boy ROM file that runs the game. So you could flash it onto a cart and play it on original Game Boy Color hardware,
Nice.
which is just like next level. So I hear about this. I immediately download it. And I gotta tell you guys, much like Infernax last year, Grimace's Birthday, in a year that features Tears of the Kingdom, is Devin Decker's current frontrunner for Game of the Year 2023. And I wish that I were just doing it for the bit. The controls are so tight and so responsive that I fell in love with the game, and within a day of its release, you can see it on the Say Report page. So there's like probably not a huge surprise that we're talking about it. I had recorded a sub 5-minute playthrough on the in-game timer on hard mode of Grimace's Birthday. The in-game timer that is up there, I think it's like 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
So is this like the old like McDonald's, Burger King, Barney, like Sega and Nintendo games where like you know, like they were easy. I'm gonna be nice and say that. You know, like are we talking about like the like those that style of game? Like what is
So
Grimace's birthday? Like
I'm
is
gonna
it a fucking like dark like
I'm
what,
going to
what's
say
the
yes and no because they do that thing that we advocate for a lot on the Stay Report, which is accessibility. You can skip any level if the level is too hard for you. If you pause the game, you can choose to skip to the next level. The game is currently made up of 2 worlds with 2 levels each. And you can skip to those. And then after you complete both worlds, you get to do it's kind of like, an on-rail shooter, but what you're shooting is candles to blow them out on one of
Nice.
3 cakes for Grimace's birthday. Like a square cake that says Grimace, a McDonald's cake that is like Ronald McDonald's there, or the McNugget cake, which is my favorite, which is just the mound of McNuggets with candles stuck everywhere. It's like the
Nice.
aggro crag of McNugget cakes. And then once you do that, it's happy birthday and it runs. So the game can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be. There's no health meter. When you take damage, your score just resets to 0. There is a timer so you can time out, but even then, like, it just takes you to the start of the world. So it's an
But
interesting.
what are you doing? Or like, is this like
Okay, so-
Kirby's like Dream World where you're just kind of walking around through doors and just exploring, or is this like a Mario game where you're just running to a flag? Like, what are you doing?
So Mario would probably be the closest thing. It's a platformer. It is first and foremost a platformer. The first 2 levels, World 1 and World 1 and World 1 2, Grimace is on a skateboard in the sewer trying to track down the Hamburglar by following his graffiti. And then the second
Fucking
world,
rad.
what?
That's rad.
Yeah.
That is fucking.
Oh, to the
getting
fact
some
that, like,
Battletoads action up in there.
He can rail grind too. On easy mode, he does it automatically. On hard mode, you have to hold down on the D-pad so that you can actually do it. You can kickflip. You can do scores. The skateboarding is so in depth, with air quotes, that there is a score attack mode where you can skateboard and see how high a score you can get in like 300 in-game seconds.
Rad. Awesome.
So that's awesome. So that's the first one. And then the second one, the whole thing behind the game is that it's Grimace. It's 11:30 on Grimace's birthday eve, and none of his friends are around. So Grimace sets off to find the Hamburglar, Birdie, and the McNugget buddies. And then along the way, he's told to try to pick up some Grimace shakes that everybody can enjoy them when his birthday eventually arrives. So it's 30 minutes to midnight, and Grimace sets off to find his friends. So he goes through the sewers, eventually winding up at a shipyard, following the graffiti of the Hamburglar to find him. And it turns out that he was doing like a big graffiti mural for Grimace's birthday. And then he gets a text from Birdie saying that she's stuck in the wires outside of McDonald's because the McNugget buddies dared her to jump off the roof of McDonald's without a parachute and without using her wings.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, it's a little dark. So she's like, I need your help, Grimace. So then World 2-1 is Grimace running along rooftops, jumping and trying to get to the end of it. And then World 2-2 is Grimace at the soda factory, and he jumps in a bubble, and it's kind of like Flappy Bird, where you got to keep him up in the air and get through this. And then at the end, it finds out that Birdie's fine. She didn't attempt suicide on a dare. No, she was setting up a happy birthday banner for Grimace with the McNugget buddies. So then they give him his cake, you blow out the candles, and then happy birthday, Grimace. Then the credits roll. So getting through them's not hard, and again, if you are finding difficulty, specifically the shipyard level is very long for the 120 in-game seconds that they give you, and it's kind of like a little bit of a maze, but if you just move forward, you can get through it. But like that one, I think you could find some difficulty in, so they allow you to skip that if you want to. But then, even if, like, once you understand the game, there are 40 Grimace shakes to find in your adventures. And it was running through the game and having collected 37 of the 40 shakes my first time through, I'm like, I gotta find those 3 mission shakes. So I started treating the game like a speedrunner and rooting it out to try to find the 3 shakes that I missed. And then once I've done that, once I've come up with like the fastest route to find all the shakes, of course I'm going to start speedrunning it. And then I'm like, I wonder if there's a board on speedrun.com. Turns out that there is, and currently nobody has 100% speedrun. So I immediately uploaded our version from the Say Report page to their site for like judgment to see if I could get on there. But then I'm like, but you know what? I'd like to do one with like an actual timer that's not retimed, where I'm not thinking about just the in-game timer, because, you know, mashing through cutscenes turns out to be part of the rules. It starts as soon as you choose hard or normal mode, and then it ends when it says happy birthday Grimace at the end. So like I set up this jerry-rigged sort of bullshit stream while I was like waiting for a ride on my laptop, and I did a run through of it and got, let me see what it is, because I have it up, or I had it up. Damn it, why did I close it? I think it's like Grimace's birthday speedrun. I got a 6 minute and 33 second run of the game, and I submitted that, and that was about a minute faster than the one that's up on our YouTube page right now. Nice. And I was the number 100% speedrunner for like a day and a half, and it felt pretty good. I'm currently 6th, but I am, and I take this, and it's a distinction, and it's not on there, I am the only 100% hard mode runner. Everybody else just does it on normal mode. So, like, I still have a feather in my cap. But, like, it's been really weird to watch this game and the community around it grow.
You know, like, but that's the thing. And I think it goes back to the idea of transparency, right? Is, like, it's clearly just a big old marketing tool for McDonald's, right? And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So in that, like, you can kind of divorce yourself from that and just have fun with what the game actually is, right? And so I think about those like really weird ones that Burger King put out on the 360, right? Like Sneak King. And shit. and how those were, you know, for what they were, those were a blast. Right? Like, it's stupid, you know, but like even going back as far as like the Super Nintendo and playing like Cool Spot or the Chester Cheetah games and shit like that. Like, yeah, these are big like corporate advertisement things out there. And the fact that like you're paying, well, in this case, you didn't pay money for this, right? Like, this is just a free thing they put out there.
Yeah, it's just a free thing out there. But again, they should have done a cart. I'm limited run games, I'm sure, is doing a cart
charge.
Someday.
Like, I think that might be a big thing, you know, like by not doing a cart, you know, they didn't charge, because even like the Burger King games were like $3, I think, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, people just have like a soft spot in their heart for that kind of shit, right? You know, it's a weird kind of like nostalgia for a form of capitalism that can be really gross and dangerous, especially when we're talking about like fast food and selling to kids and all of this sort of shit, right? But with the transparency out there, as a you know, late 30-year-old, you know, man, like, you have the ability to think for yourself, and you were able to dive into this thing and have some fun with it, and like, that's cool. Like, that's rad that this thing is so much fun for you to like play around with. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, that I mean, from top to bottom, like, celebrating Grimace's birthday from the get-go was already wild, but like the bug wild nature of then putting out like a GBA title for it is just is kind of like a chef's kiss moment of like, okay, if you're gonna do this crazy thing, going this far with it is what you have to do, right?
Agreed. And it really does, like, nostalgia is the big thing that is specifically targeting our age group, right? It targets all age groups, but I feel like millennials marketing.
You're not putting a GBA style game out for somebody born after 2010, right? Like, that's just not that. Like, it's cool if they enjoy it, and I'm sure there are things in it for them to enjoy. But the nostalgia factor isn't aimed at them because they don't have that nostalgia for that, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the games that we used to buy Dale because she got her Game Boy Color, and then she has like the Dragon Tales game, which is very similar. Like, this game really reminds me of the Dragon Tales game in a lot of ways, because I remember when I sat down and just beat that game. Or like the Hercules Disney tie-in game for Game Boy that one of my cousins had, and like, he just had fun doing it, and then when I actually played it, I'm like, oh, there's actually some real depth to this game, until the final level where you only beat one of the 4 Titans, and I get really mad because I'm like, oh, I killed the Wind Titan, I guess that means the threat is over. 3 other Titans, Hercules. Do your fucking job.
Hey, you gotta save something for the movie, man.
That's true, right? But like that, so it's that, but it's also like the licensed games that made up the glut of the NES when I was a kid who was going to McDonald's for birthday parties and stuff. Like,
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing is like video games have always, in throughout their entire history, been fueled by selling themselves in really gross ways to kids, right? I mean, like, think about like arcades and pumping quarters into machines, or like Nintendo and like the idea of Nintendo Hard. We want to make these games so hard that you can't win them when you rent them. You have to buy them, right? Which sucks because not everybody can afford to buy a damn thing, but some people can afford to at least dip their toe in. But then Nintendo always has that thing where it's like, oh, you don't have the manual, well, then you can't progress. Well, fuck off.
Which
like
but
that
what
kind of
also
gross shit
sucks
has
about
always
that,
existed in video games.
the other thing that sucks about that is, even if you buy it, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be able to beat it, because that like gatekeep level still exists in the game.
Right, exactly.
So-
yeah,
so-
it doesn't. Yeah, the game, the take home version like doesn't have like a different setup to it. It's still going to be that bullshit that you could have rented.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I rented Battletoads. Friggin' the speeder bike level is still a piece of bullshit. Like, it doesn't become easier at home.
Right. Yeah, so with that kind of like understanding going in, like, yeah, of course there's a fucking McDonald's marketing tool out there that's a video game that like you can still enjoy, because like that's always been the case with video games, like, and it's why when people want to talk about like artsy video games and the ways that like that video games have really solidified themselves as a creative medium and stuff like that, like this stuff offends them so much in those conversations. It's like, no, we're trying to prove that video games have a reasonable place in the realm of like storytelling and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, they can do that, but there needs to be this going on behind it, because honestly, this is the shit that keeps the industry going.
Yeah, it is. There needs to be. I mean, like, going back as far as to Donkey Kong is this very famous game, right? Everybody kind of knows Donkey Kong, but that was originally a Popeye game. Like,
Right.
That's what Shigeru Miyamoto wanted to make a game about Popeye. And then when they couldn't get the rights to that character, Bluto became a gorilla, and Popeye became Jumpman, and Olive Oil became Pauline, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually, because of the success of Donkey Kong, Popeye was like, we want you to make our video game. And then there's a Popeye
famously,
game. Like,
going all the way back to Pong, one of the first things that Pong did when it became so successful is they created an entire new style of board that could be put in bars that people could put their drinks down on and play Pong against each other. Like, they created an entire like way to play that game that could be put in a place for you to put money into it, right? Like they were like, well, shit, this stuff's so big, like we can exploit this. Was like a thought with the very first video game.
I mean, yeah. And if you're someone out there who, like, now that Ted Lasso is done and you're going to get Apple TV to watch the 3 seasons of Ted Lasso, while you have it, watch the Tetris movie. Yes, a lot of what we're talking about how it was monetized and it was about making money is unfortunately a part of that story, but also, like, that movie is fantastic in terms of how it tells the story and sort of distills what goes into making a video game or publishing a video game. Like, it's not all unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about it much when it came out, but I actually, I only dipped my toe in because, God, there's like just so much. I think there's like 11 and a half hours out there of Double Fine put out the documentary behind the scenes of Psychonauts 2. They've done this in the past. I think it was Broken. What's the really artsy one with Elijah Wood in it that they did way back in the day?
Broken Age?
Dreams
Is that the name of it? I don't know.
Broken Age.
I think it might be Broken Age.
Yeah, but they've done this in the past where they do this behind the scenes, like documentary style, what the whole thing was going through. But that was not nearly as in depth as the one that they did for Psychonauts 2. And the ones that Double Fine put out for the Psychonauts 2 stuff is like some eye-opening shit. behind a company that is trying something maybe a little bit bigger than they should have, in a time when like everything goes to shit because it's like pre-COVID, but then it gets into COVID eventually and stuff. Like there's so much in that documentary that as you watch it, you're just like, I can't believe they allowed this to be like out there for people to see. Like conversations about like artists straight up quitting because they feel like it's getting too corporate in the room and shit like that. Like, and just like these weird, I guess one of the big things that I know about later on in the series, because this was something that came out in the public, is they had hired on somebody to be an honest to God level designer, which is not big at Double Fine. They always start with the art first and then design levels for what they've designed for the art. It's what makes a game like Psychonauts so fucking buck wild, and why every level feels like it's its own game is because they started with the concept and the art first, and then they were like, okay, how do we make this video gamey, and then tie it all together in this overworld of him going into people's minds and stuff, right? But for two, because they were getting much bigger, and I think this is after like Microsoft gets involved and they're kind of publishing it, and they want a little bit more quote unquote legitimacy out of the process. Like they bring in a guy that designs video games, successful at what he does, but his philosophy is always like, well, we need to design a level and then put the art on top of that. Completely different than what Double Fine does. And like the ways in which that rubs against the whole, like the rest of the culture at that company, to the point where that person eventually parts ways. And by all intents and purposes, it sounds like it was pretty amicable. Like they were like, yeah, what the style of which I want to work is not present in this culture, and everybody at Double Fine was like, yeah, like we respect the work you do, but it just doesn't work here. Like so there was this like blow up of this guy coming and then leaving, and what does that mean for the state of the game and blah blah blah. And like watching the documentary, from what I understand, you do get a lot of like context on that conversation, and it's crazy. But yeah, the ways in which there's this constant back and forth about them wanting to do a sequel to one of their biggest games ever with Psychonauts, but still wanting to appease their new overlords over at Xbox, and how that kind of really, like, how those two cultures rub against each other, and you know, came out with a moderately successful game in the end. Psychonauts 2 is pretty well liked by the people that have actually played it. I think the biggest issue it has is not enough people ended up playing it, right? And so like it's in this weird realm of like it's successful, but not by the metrics that we normally measure success in the gaming industry, right? And there's this entire 11-hour documentary about how it got made, and like it addresses a lot of this shit that we're talking about, of like the way the industry just kind of is constantly this balancing act, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's every industry. It's such a weird thing about video games in terms of how like we don't think of it that way. Maybe it's because it's a younger industry. We think that like it's going to be better or things like that. But a lot of the pitfalls and foibles that we see with other industries still exist within video games. Yeah. They're not the castle on the hill. They are. Which is the saddest part of all, right? You'd hope that it'd be better, but companies hiring people and then just firing them as soon as they've done what they did, and it's not great. So then you see a passion project like Grimace's Birthday, and it's got like responsive controls and it's fun, even though at its core it was, purchased by McDonald's as a marketing gimmick. You still have some heart for that game, right? And I enjoyed it. But I am happy on one level to have lost the world record, because while I had the world record, I was making sure to go to McDonald's and buy a Grimace milkshake every day to be like, hey, by the way, I got the world record on the Grimace's Birthday game, 100%. And then like the person at the drive-thru's like, okay.
And slowly you're turning into a Grimace.
Robble. No, that's Hamburg. I don't know. He doesn't use vowels. My mom's mad about that. When you order a Grimace shake, the whole menu, if it's one of the electronic menus, which I think almost all McDonald's have now because of the middle-aged redesign of the stores, away from the happy-go-lucky bright red roof with golden arches to like the dour, I work in beiges now.
The fucking like brutalist reimagining of McDonald's architecture, yeah. Yeah,
brutalist by way of Panera Bread is the best way that I would describe it.
Nice.
They have those things, so when you order it, it flips over to Grimace thanking you for ordering for his birthday and helping to celebrate, but it doesn't have any vowels in it. And my mom's like, I'm not doing it again. I can't. Why would Grimace not know what vowels are? And she's got a point.
He's not from that part of the tongue, Mom.
I believe if he's part of any taste bud, he's got to be umami, right? The fifth flavor. And on the sixth day, God created Grimace, the sixth flavor.
The sixth flavor.
Oh my gosh.
Man, any other good news this week?
I mean, we got to talk Mario. We have to talk Mario for a couple of reasons. First of all, this is what I didn't want to segue to, so I'm glad we did a bunch of Grimace's birthday stuff. The death of E3. No one is mourning E3, though. I have to be honest with you.
I mean, I'm sorry. Are we only acknowledging it's dead now? I feel like it's been dead for years. No?
Okay, well, E3 has been dead for years, but this is the first year, like, really post E3, where everybody kind of got to do it at their own pace. So instead of being, like, this one harried week of a bunch of announcements, like, what 2023's summer video game reveal celebration did was prove that E3 is dead and gone. Like, it might have been dead, but now I'd say it's officially buried. Because all of the companies kind of gave each other like a week to talk about and celebrate their things.
Yeah.
And I think that the coverage was better. I have a much deeper understanding of everything. And then what Nintendo did this past Wednesday with their Nintendo Direct was fucking amazing. I'm like, I had no games to look forward to. And now suddenly I want it to be November right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, you know, they did that thing that Nintendo always does, is they weren't out there touting a bunch of shit that they were working on, hoping, you know, because I think they learned their lesson with stuff like Tears of the Kingdom, where they were so quick to announce that, and then, you know, they wanted to make sure that game was perfect, so they kept pushing it. And now that it's out, you know, it's a big success, and it was worth all of that. But I think that they just don't want that headache anymore of, like, promising a game and then spending 3 years telling everybody we are working on it. We promise.
Yeah, that's true, and I think they're trying to find that nice middle ground, because that first year of the Switch, where they were announcing a game and releasing a game every month, had to have been like living on the high hog for Nintendo.
Well, and you have to wonder how many of those games cannibalized each other, because as much as I love all of these games, like, at the end of the day, I have a limited bank account, I have a limited time, I have a limited attention span. So, like, they release 10 games in a year. I'm lucky if I get to 2 or 3 of them, right? And so, like, you have to also wonder how much of it was them being like, after that, being like, man, these were all fun, and there's audiences for all of these, but we could have done much better if we had just, like, put some stuff off for a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it was that balancing act, and I think they're still doing it, and they're getting much better, because people were begging for the sequel to Breath of the Wild, that, like, it sort of was this cloud over them. So by finally, like, saying, like, we're working on it, just shut the hell up. Like, but then it became an even bigger cloud, because then people are like, well, you said you're working on it, but you didn't mention it. Are you really working on it?
What about Tears of the Kingdom, though? Where's that, though?
Right? So I think they're balancing it. And what they did post Tears of the Kingdom with this thing, that just new WarioWare game, touching on probably the July release of the Mario Kart 8 booster pack. Actually, my guess is it's going to be closer to August, because they're going to do the August one, and then they're going to release the last one right at or after Christmas. I think right before Christmas, because then they can release a copy of the cart that has all of them on it.
Right.
And then, you know, that's perfect for Christmas. And everything stops on the 17th of November currently with the Super Mario RPG remake release. Oh, what's that? Yeah, that's right. They're remaking Super Mario RPG. What?
I'm so genuinely excited with everything that they revealed in that trailer. Like, I mean, we've talked about our both respect and love for that game, right? Yeah. So, like, this is no secret that, like, we're super excited about it. But it just looks damn good. It looks really goofy, like, in a way that, like, when you first watch the trailer, right, there's this, like, style to it that you're just like, there's a moment where you kind of have to just accept the style that they're using, right? Like the squat nature of the characters and like the bubbliness of some stuff in the world and stuff like that. That at first I was just like, this is a silly style, but then I was thinking like, when Super Mario RPG came out, it had such a unique look to it compared to other Mario games that like they had to try and recapture that in some way, right? That like uniqueness of the way that Mario and his friends look in that game. And this is, I think, a great way of doing it because like they are distinctive styles for these characters that we have not seen in many other places.
Yeah, it's not the same Mario. I mean, going into 3D, Super Mario RPG was the first 3D rendered Mario. It came out like 4 months before Super Mario 64. So you have that, and that exists. Now we're post, like, God, Mario Odyssey, right? And how easy would it have then to be just to take that Mario and drop it into Super Mario RPG? But then it feels more like a Mario game and less like an RPG. So you need to keep it unique. It's like if there's a multiverse of Marios, Super Mario RPG Mario is a distinct variant of Mario.
Yeah, and the other game to look at, and we also got news on this, is the Mario Rabbids franchise, right? Mm-hmm. And the art within that game is super fun because they have all of the Rabbids stuff inspiring a lot of things, and so there's a very unique look to the game as a whole. But if you pulled Mario, Luigi, Peach out of those games and put them up against a Mario, Luigi, or Peach from other games, I don't know if you'd be able to say like, oh, that's definitely the Mario Rabbids Mario, right? Like if you were looking at a lineup of Marios and you had to pick who was from what, there are some pretty distinctive ones that you could point a finger at, but I think there's a good handful that you'd kind of get lost in like Mario Sunshine. If he didn't have the backpack on, I don't know if I'd be able to distinguish him from a different Mario of that era, right?
He's wearing short sleeves. That's the other distinctive thing about him. He's on vacation, so it's not a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah, but that's what like those are the little details you have to look for. You can't. It wouldn't be the silhouette. Like just looking at Mario quickly at a glance, I would be hard pressed to pick what Mario I was looking at. Right? Not the case with the original Super Mario RPG or this Super Mario RPG. I like the style that they have gone with is like pixel perfect in some ways, like an up-res of what they did in back in the 90s. I love it so much.
Yeah. The thing is, I kind of just want it to be a 1-for-1 remake. That said, I'd really love if Sephiroth were in the game in some way, shape, or form.
Well, so I was actually wondering, do we see was it Final Fantasy? Who's the RP? What's the RPG
so it's Culex? That boss,
infamous like hard boss, right?
He is inspired by Final Fantasy, but he is a wholly original character for the game.
Right. So there's this idea that there is already kind of is he original because he references like events in like whatever game I thought he was from.
He's wholly original.
I may be misremembering that.
Yeah,
but there is this infamous like side boss that is not required to win the game in any fashion, and is like super hard up until you're prepared for him, and then suddenly like he's a breeze, depending on like what you've got set up, right? Because if you do a couple of the right moves with Gino in your party, like you can just fucking own that guy, which is like one of the best feelings in the world after butting heads against him for the entire game. Finally getting to him and then like getting through him in a breeze is like this huge cathartic moment if you can pull it off. And so like, is that going to be in this version? Because that's so kind of unique to that moment in time, like what they're referencing and what they're doing, and so inconsequential to the rest of the game. I could easily see them not doing that. Now, you introduce an interesting idea. What if they do something like that, but it's somebody else, like a Sephiroth? That would be amazing. Yeah. If you like everybody trying to go to that fight shows up and it's fucking Sephiroth.
Sephiroth. Like it would just be crazy. But yeah, Culex is. He's highly inspired by Final Fantasy IV. His name is similar to Golbez, the main like human villain of that game, and he calls himself a Dark Knight, which feels like reference to Cecil, who the main protagonist of that game. But while he is an allusion to Final Fantasy, as a character, he is a wholly original character. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose the Culex of it all. So I would like, if there is a Sephiroth, it to be a separate secret boss fight. Throw it in Great Guys Casino. That would be awesome. I would love that. Right. It would, and I also, right, seeing the success of something like the Super Mario RPG randomizer, if they could somehow embed that in the game as a version or style to play the game as, that would also be very cool. But I think what is most likely to happen with Super Mario RPG? Well, what's most likely to happen is that it's just a standalone title, acknowledging the fact that like this is something that you as the fans have wanted for a long time. I feel like it could be testing the waters. And maybe this was originally developed as proof of concept for what it could look like in the modern era. And if this game sells really well, we get a proper sequel to Super Mario RPG. And that is where we see like an expansion of that universe.
Yeah, I mean, from a fan perspective, that's the best thing we can hope for is, that we support this thing and that they see how much we still love it and they do something more with it. I mean, you're always hoping that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we can really say for sure that it's a guarantee that's what they're doing, right? Because like I think at the end of the day, it's always about money. If it sells really well, of course they're going to consider if there's anything more they can do with it, right? Which I think is the better way to look at it. Is like, I hope for this game's success because I hope it proves to them that this is something that people are still clamoring for. And I think it will be successful because like it's all I've seen anybody talk about.
Yeah, I think it will be successful too. But then you also look at the original game was successful and we never got a proper follow-up to that. Despite there having been some ideas that were then upcycled into Paper Mario.
Well, you have to consider the state of things at the time in terms of these two businesses, both Nintendo and Square, who came together for this. It was kind of lightning striking, right? Like It was so unusual for these two companies to come together. We now live in a realm where, like, Nintendo is looking for any handhold it can put out there to keep people on the Switch. Not that they're failing at that, but that they kind of understand that they're kind of off in the water on their own, right?
Yeah.
So they need a fucking life raft of some kind.
And Square has been their life raft with the 2.5D remakes of games. So
right, and Square is kind of in this place now where they're not guaranteed to have a huge success in America specifically. Like Final Fantasy can come out all they want, and that'll be huge in Japan and even in Europe in some fashion. But in America, they're not guaranteed to. They're not the juggernaut in America that they were at that time when they were just basically re-releasing a bunch of Japanese titles.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm excited for it though, and it's one of the things where I'd love to see a sequel to it, but because I'd rather see a sequel, I really don't want the original Super Mario RPG to be too changed in the remake process.
Sure, I don't think that they will. I mean, there's so much in that trailer that they were trying to show, like, look, this is still here. Like the Yoshis and the Yoshi race is clearly still there because they've got the track in front of you. All of the stuff with the frog with Malo and the stuff with the tadpoles and the music and stuff, you saw that there too. And these are all like, again, kind of inconsequential side bits that if they were going to change anything, this is the stuff they could change. A lot of the stuff we didn't see is some of the core shit, and like they can't be changing too much of the core stuff, right? Like I don't know. We'll see.
I would certainly hope
out.
Not. That said,
like from what we have seen in that trailer, I am pretty confident that it's going to be really close to our original, game that we love so much.
I think it's just going to be quality of life additions, right? Because there's that new meter that seems to go up whenever you do a timed strike properly. So like there's some, and what I really love is that moves are shown whether they're unblockable. So like, okay, I'm going to get hit with water burst and I can't do anything about it. But if it doesn't say unblockable, then I should try to find the timing, which is something I'm excited about based on that trailer. I mean, I'm just excited. It's a great game and I'm excited to play it again. I mean, I'm going to be out of the country when it releases, and I have already arranged for a pre-order so that I can play it on my plane ride home.
Nice.
Like I'm pretty excited about this game. But I'm also excited about Super Mario Brothers Wonder, because a new 2D Mario game that seems to be trying to do its own aesthetic. It's not new Super Mario Brothers anymore. It's something unique.
I can't even begin to describe to people what the hook of that game is. Like, shit gets weird. It's basically 2D Mario and shit gets weird.
Yeah, and And here's what I've been doing. I mean, since the last time we recorded, I finished Tears of the Kingdom, and I'm holding it back until Siegen gets to where I am. So know that I have feelings. You can always reach out to me to hear those feelings on Twitter or anywhere, because I would love to discuss my feelings about Tears of the Kingdom, but I am holding back because I want people to experience it. I mean, even a month out, when I say I finished the game, the first response is no spoilers. Like, just don't spoil anything for me. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I wasn't going to, but it's a good litmus test for me to know that, like, that's still how people feel about the game.
I mean, I'm 100 hours into that game, and I only just get the map filled in. Like I'm still working through stuff. Now that I've filled in the depths, I have a better idea of where my shrines are that I haven't gotten yet up on the overworld. So, like, I'm using that to, like discovering some of the stuff going on with the relationship between the depths and the overworld, and like using that then to like move through places and get around quicker and stuff like that. Like I've only just started to unlock kind of some of that stuff, and like I said, I'm like 100 hours in. I like straight up I was like 60-70 hours in when I finally got the last like tool that you get for your thing, right? I've discovered the 5th temple just now, and I'm nowhere near ready to take it on just yet. Like, there's stuff I got to do first.
Did you do have you done the other temples before you found the 5th temple, or did you find it on your own?
So I did the other temples.
Okay.
And there was nothing pointing me to a 5th temple, except the only thing pointing me to, and this is not a spoiler, is that you have 5 fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
So the only thing that I was like, there's a character we've been talking to this whole time that I feel like we should have run into by now, and then on top of that, I'm missing a ring. So I was like, there's clearly something else out there, but that's the only knowledge I had. It was in filling out the depths and trying to get, so I've gotten all of the light routes, right? Like, so by finishing the depths, it was in that exploration that I found myself in a room, and I'm like, oh, here we are. This is definitely it. But I don't have like the prompts or anything for it yet. I'm sure that I will get there in the next like week or so. I will have basically all of the shrines done in the next few days. So by having all of the shrines done and having all of the light routes found, at that point I'm going to then probably focus on just kind of mainlining, like getting to the end. Because I've also done a ton of the side quest stuff. I've found so many of the old like things that you can find down in the depths and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff I feel like I have started to kind of come to the end on, right? Because like there's certain things I'm just not going to. I'm not going to worry about all the little side quests, side adventures I've done, because those all lead to some really cool and important stuff. And if a side quest is something I can just offhandedly, I'll do it, but I'm not going to force myself to finish that. Like, I'm never going to worry about Korok seeds in either of these games. Breath of the Wild, I never did, and I definitely won't in Tears of the Kingdom, right? I probably don't think I'm going to worry about getting a full battery pack for my Zonai stuff. Like, that's just not hugely important to me anymore. I've got 5. I don't feel like I need to go the full 8. Like, if I happen to get enough to get another one, I will go get one.
The full 8. Like, it's 16.
Well, right, because then you can double over on it, right? Because you can double charge them. Yeah, exactly. But like, I'm at 5 full batteries now, and I'm pretty much able to get wherever I need to with it. Yeah. And like, so there's a couple of things that I'm just like, I'm not gonna push that. So in that, I have like my set goals that I know I'm gonna do. So I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel on that game and realizing I'm coming to an end on it. But it's probably still gonna be a while for me because of the things I want to do.
I will say this. This is the only thing that I will say of it. I was surprised when I looked at how long I'd played and seen that it was exactly 90 hours, that I played the game for 90 hours before I rolled credits. And here's the one that has been blowing people away, and now it's finally put on digital tape. I don't think I'll ever have to say it again the way that I've said it. I never found Hestu. I'm like, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. I'm going to use the inventory that was given to me from the beginning of the game. Fuck that guy.
I mean, that's wild, and you making games harder on yourself is nothing new. I'm just surprised you didn't just run into him, because I'm pretty sure like he's just in the town square.
Yep,
he's just around.
Never saw him.
So it's not a matter of finding him so much as he's just there.
Yep, never saw him, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck that guy. I don't even care. I'm like, I'm not going as far as like the chaotic evil crucifying Koroks, but every Korok I see that's like, I need to find my friend, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a you problem.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like I just and like I said, I got to that same point in Breath of the Wild where like at first it was fun to try all the different Korok stuff. And if I'm running around and I see like an easy one or if I'm in the mood for like a goofy like moving puzzle like that, I'll do them. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm also if I'm on a path towards something and I hear some dude that's like and I'm like, nope, sorry, don't you're on your own, bud. Bye.
Nope. Maybe take the backpack off and go get your friend, and then he can help you carry the backpack back. You piece of shit.
Well, literally in the fiction of these games, you're the only Hylian like humanoid that can see them. So he could take the backpack off and leave it there, and it would be safe because nobody can see the damn thing. It's not like somebody's gonna steal it because they wouldn't know it's there.
Dude, that's the fuck of it, right? That is the true fuck of the Koroks, is the fact that what you just said, but the Koroks do not abandon their backpacks because while they're willing to be like, help me, at the same time they're like, if we leave this stuff here, he's gonna steal our shit. He will steal our shit.
Yeah. But I'm having a hell of a time. Like certain costumes that I definitely want to get pieces of and upgrade like crazy. Like I've been just upgrading a couple of very specific ones, just because like it's cool. Like they're fun and they look good and like the powers on them are good shit. Like I got the full glide suit the other day.
Yeah.
And like I just have a fucking blast with that now. Like flying through the air.
Did you upgrade it yet?
I've upgraded it a couple of times. Does it do anything more if you upgrade
Once
it further?
Everything's at 2, you don't need to upgrade it anymore unless you want to mainline it as your outfit.
So the only reason I upgrade anything past 2 is if I wear it enough that I might find myself in a dumb situation where I still have the glide suit on because where I landed from falling from the sky, there's a bunch of guys around, so I want to make sure it's upgraded a little bit past that so that I'm not completely screwed.
Yeah, I mean you can change outfits. Luckily, it's not Dark Souls, so like things pause when you pause. But
the mining outfit was the same way. As I was exploring the depths, I realized I was like, shit, I keep finding myself running into big like mini bosses and shit with the mining suit on, and it was all my lowest level shit. Yeah. So I actually spent a while like upgrading the hell out of it because I'm like, I'm going to be wearing this for a while and I'm going to constantly find myself in situations where I need to be in a safer. So like I'm going to upgrade this. And then, I hit a point where I don't really need it anymore because I've got all the light roots. And I've got this really powerful suit that now I still put on from time to time because it's my most powerful suit at the moment.
Yeah. The only thing I brought to 4 was the Hylian hood, and that's because I branded it for the save report using dyeing. So I dyed it beautiful yellow.
The two for me the 2 head pieces that I will always upgrade as much as I can will always be the Rito headwear with like the feather in your hair and all that, and the Gerudo one, because if I find myself somewhere where I need to be in cold outfits or summer outfits, I want to make sure that those are powerful, right? Like they help with the resistances and shit like that. Yeah, there's certain things I care about finishing and there's certain things I don't, and that's gonna be true for everybody. That's like when you were like, I've rolled credits, I'm done, I'm stepping away from the game. Like after 90 hours, I was like, totally fair. I probably am gonna put in twice as much.
Oh yeah, no, and I don't doubt it. It's why I don't want to like talk about some of my thoughts about things yet. But I do want to say what my journey has been post Tears of the Kingdom, and then we'll probably wrap this one up. The first thing I did after beating Tears of the Kingdom, Infidelity. He is a ROM hacker. He's actually more of a ROM porter. Ported the original Legend of Zelda from NES to Super Nintendo, and the beta dropped the day before I finished the game, so I'm like, I'm going to play the first Zelda. And I remembered 97% of that game. I just was not sure which gravestone you push to get the magic sword. So I looked that up because I had like 1 heart left, and I'm like, I just want to get the sword, and then I'll be done here. But I'm happy that was a game I played a lot in the beginning of 2020, and I'm happy how much of it got baked into my mind. But then, because I have my Super Nintendo set up, I'm like, I'm going to finally beat Super Mario All-Stars. Now, what do you think beating Super Mario All-Stars would, like, what would that be?
I assume that means 100%ing each one of those games, but what do you qualify?
Rolling credits on all 4 games.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean, it's games that I've beaten before.
You
So
mean the American cart, right? Not the Japanese cart that also had Super Mario World on it, right?
well, no, there's an American cart that has Super Mario World, but it was the original cart of Super Mario All Stars with SMB2 Japanese called the Lost
I thought the
Levels.
difference was the Famicom had the one that had the.
No.
Yeah, but not the one that had Super Mario on it is what I'm saying, right?
What do you mean? I'm confused.
When you 100%ed it, you didn't play the one that had Super Mario World on it, right?
That's correct. That's just a separate release that came out later on in the system's life. I just beat Super Mario All Stars, not Super Mario All Stars and World. That's the name of that cart. I think we're saying the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
We are.
Okay. No. So what the one that I beat was Super Mario Brothers 2 Japanese, The Lost Levels, Super Mario Brothers 2 American or Super Mario USA, and Super Mario Brothers 3. But the one that like I'm really happy about and what has set me off down a just insane path is The Lost Levels. Having completed The Lost Levels for the first time, like everybody talks about how difficult they are, but I just like kind of put my nose to the ground and was like, I'm going to beat every level of this. Mm-hmm. And I did, and I had a blast. And I had such a blast that I wanted to see if I could do it on the original NES version of the game. So I beat that this past Friday, and that was awesome. That like, it's so rewarding to beat the Super Mario Brothers Lost Levels. Like, because of the challenge and what's there, I've enjoyed it. But then, finally having done that, are you familiar with Super Mario Brothers Versus? Do you know what Versus is?
Like that makes me think of the old game where you were like running around like hitting the Beetle Bros out of the pipes.
Yeah, just
shit,
Mario Brothers. No.
Right.
Super Mario Brothers Versus is an arcade game that was released in the Nintendo Versus series. As far as I know, there's only 2 games. There might be more, but there are 2 that are like famous, and it is Super Mario Brothers and Castlevania Versus. And they are essentially the NES versions of the game, but then as you get a little deeper into them, you notice some changes specifically to the arcade version of the game. So Super Mario Brothers Versus, which I've gotten to play in person. There used to be an arcade in like Connecticut that had one of the cabinets, and it was fun to play, but the buttons and the joystick were old, so like it always felt like this is not the best way to play this game.
Yeah.
But they released a version of it on the Switch, and I bought it because I wanted to get better at the game. And the really crazy thing about that, how much do you know about the original Super Mario Brothers, is where I want to start this discussion.
I don't know how to answer that question, Dan.
Okay. Well, I mean, have you beaten every level of Super Mario Brothers? Like, are you
the original game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you know that after you pass like 4-4, you start to get hard modes of earlier levels. Like 5-3 is
you get remixes of earlier levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Like 5-3 is 1-3 but with shorter platforms and bullet bills flying at you.
Right.
That's like the first one. Or then 5-4 is 2-4 but with the giant fire bar. Like that's how they do it. For Super Mario Brothers Versus, because it came out after Lost Levels, all of those levels that are like a harder version of an earlier level are replaced with levels from the Lost Levels. So Super Mario Brothers Versus starts out and you're like, oh, this is just Mario Brothers. And then you get to like 5-3 and it is 4-3 from the Lost Levels, which is the one where notoriously you have to jump off of a Koopa in order to make a long jump.
Right.
So you need to like make sure that you measure where it's going to be so that you can land on it and then also continue to move. Like a kind of like what people point at is why that game is difficult. Is like that type of puzzle.
Well, right. I mean, like the Lost Levels were pulled out of original, like they were Lost Levels because Nintendo was like, this is a little too much for some people.
This is going to be too hard.
Then people get their hands on it and they were like, no, more.
Yeah. And now we have Kaizo Mario made from Super Mario World. So like it's this natural progression. And I get that. I understand that like that was rewarding to overcome that challenge. even though like how ridiculous it was. So now I've beaten Super Mario Brothers Versus in addition to the lost levels, and I feel really good. And now I'm working on trying to, if you beat lost levels 8 times, it unlocks like additional levels in it. So I'm trying to go through and get those 8 clears.
That's fucking wild.
So that's what I've been doing. It's just like that. But then last night, I'm like, maybe I should beat the first Super Mario Brothers. So at 11:30, I started playing, and I finished at 11:54. And I'm just like, wow, I'm feeling really like Super Mario Brother guy right now. So seeing that Wonder trailer, it hit at the perfect time for me.
Yeah.
Like I've been,
it's gonna be a wild experience, and my only thing is I really hope that there's an online component to it. I really hope, because I would love to play it with you guys, but also they should be doing that now.
they should.
Nintendo needs to get on that shit.
I agree. God, and I didn't even realize this, but I was watching like reactions to it, and someone was disappointed. Like, we got Super Mario Brothers Wonder, but I really wish that they would do a proper battle royale in the style of Super Mario 35 again. And I'm like, man, that would be cool. And like, I'm still happy for the other stuff, but if that were a component in Wonder, that'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Like, it opened up all these possibilities. But at this time, I could turn Mario into an elephant. That's all I need right now. And I want to play it right now.
It's not even like the craziest thing in that preview.
I know.
Some wild shit that happens that like it's very flowy in a way that other Mario games like I mean, you talked about them being like speedrun and Kaizo and like the ways in which they really feed that. Like, part of that is because they're tight, right? And this feels very loosey-goosey, and a lot of what's going on, I'm sure it'll still be a tight experience, because like it's Nintendo, and that's just what they do, is they lure you in with like this sense of like, oh, this is silly and goofy, and then like 10 minutes into it, you're just like ripping your hair out because you're just like, I'm gonna kick the shit out of this game. Like, and I'm sure that's exactly what will happen with this one, right? Like, we have Super Mario 3D World in the house, and then we have the Super Mario Brothers U release that they
the
put
new
out on
Super
the
Mario
Switch, right?
Brothers Deluxe, I think.
So we've got both of those in this house. We play 3D World far more often than the other, because the other one is just too old school Mario for the rest of the family. It's just not what they enjoy. Whereas like 3D World, it's a little bit more bubbly and a little bit easier to like goof off and stuff in that game, right? And so like I imagine that while Wonder does look very silly and goofy, and we will probably buy it and the family will play it with me a few times, it's probably going to be one of those ones that after a while it's just not going to be their jam, which is unfortunate. But like I am super looking forward to a new 2D Mario, and then add to that the weirdness of it. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I don't know. The best quote is this Dale when I showed her the trailer. What is this Kirby ass bullshit in my Mario game? And I'm like, I get that. Like that floatiness that you're describing, that like not rigidity that has kind of come to define Mario platformers while we've been seeing it in the 3 Kirby games that have come out on Switch.
Yeah.
Like, it is very reminiscent of what you're getting in the Kirby games. And
I will
I'm
say
still
this.
excited.
We've been watching
for
Mario
it.
take mushrooms for years. This is the first time it looks like it's actually going to affect him.
So Mario's just tripping now. That's what
I mean, watch that preview and tell me that's not what's going on that entire time.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it. And playable Daisy, playable Yoshi, which I confirm. There's one shot where it's 4 people playing as Yoshi. So like that looks exciting. I don't know if it's
there was like a playable Yoshi, and then a moment where
Mario jumps on him.
Yoshi.
Yeah.
So,
but like I also think that's a moment where like Yoshi is also being played as someone, and then it's like a team up attack.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's potential there. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we won't know until October 20th, but we're gonna be talking about it on October 22nd. Is what I'm gonna say. I can't. I'm gonna be talking about it. I already took the day off. I'm excited. I don't know. But until then, I'm going to try to become the best I can at the lost level, Super Mario Brothers 2 Japanese. And I've been having a good time with it. I'm like really just feeling happy about video games again. And I don't know. Like, I think it's Grimace's birthday that did it. So thank you to Grimace and all of your 6 flavored wonder.
Whether he's a milkshake or a taste bud. Thank you, Grimace.
All right. Is there anything else that you want to add before we send this one away? We got a little long, but we had last week off, so we had a lot to talk about.
I mean, I guess that's how they justify Grimace not truly being a villain. If he is a milkshake, he was just trying to steal back his brethren. He was actually a freedom fighter.
Oh my god. I mean, and what if he's a milkshake that's gone sour?
Oh, man.
Who knows? All right. Well, thank you for joining us for the Say Report. If you have any thoughts that you want to share with us about anything that we've talked about this week, you can find us on Twitter at The Say Report. That's also the best way to get in touch with Sejin, since, as he's already crowed about and like patted himself on the back, he has gotten off of social media. But I check our page regularly, and if you let me know that you want Sejin to know your thoughts, trust me, I wake him up at 3 a.m. plenty with things that people have told me about the show.
Yeah, and if you want to reach out to Dev so that he can have somebody to talk to about Tears of the Kingdom with, because clearly I'm going to be deep in it for a while longer, then you can find him at Devin D. Decker.
Just understand that for every Tears of the Kingdom is like 3 minutes on Super Mario Brothers: The Lost Levels. I am a man obsessed. With that in mind, William, take us home so I can get back to playing the Lost Levels. Have a good one, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejin Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.